Hello, Internet. Will this be the smoothest opening we've ever had? Doc, how you doing tonight?
Good, doing all right.
All right.
Hanging in there.
I'm almost terrified to say that might be the smoothest start we have ever had. Hello, Internet. Welcome, people. This is the game brought to you by Dungeon Studios. I am one of your two illustrious hosts, Grom, Grumpy Old Man Merwin. Today I have the recently traveled, overly exhausted, not terribly well rested Dr.Pletorius. How you doing tonight, Doc?
Doing all right. Doing okay.
That
I have
is
been traveling though,
stellar.
man. It's
I
been
know you got
crazy.
out and about. That's good for
Yeah, it's
you.
been great.
Good for you. I travel
Yeah,
constantly.
I'm
For
very
me,
excited.
vacation is anytime I don't have to go anywhere. So we consider that a good day. Today was not
Oh,
one of those
you're a
days.
proponent of the staycation.
Oh, 100,000%. Unfortunately, next
Okay.
tomorrow's shift will not be a staycation. I will be driving another 4 hours for work tomorrow. So super fun. But that is neither here nor there. This is nerds talking on the internet. What better thing could there be? Did we fall off the internet? Oh no. There we go. All right, well, with the introduction out of the way, I wanted to get right into the important stuff. Shameless plugs for the week. As you guys have heard us say numerous times, we have a podcast, we have a Patreon, we have a game studio, we have modules, we have magazines, and we have our Kickstarter. And they're on Volume 2
We have
Adventures.
a website, and we have a website and a Discord too,
We have all of the
right? We have
things.
a
We
website,
are almost like we know what
all
we're
the
doing.
all the things.
But we have a
Yeah.
Kickstarter. It is fully funded. We are now working on our stretch goals. Currently, we've unlocked, or we're working on stretch goal number 1. And
Thank you for all those funders, man. Becoming a creator and having people fund you in a Kickstarter is awesome. It
yeah,
gets everybody pumped.
yeah. Like I said last time when we were talking, one of my long time dreams has been to have my name attached to some nerdy shit in print that somebody might buy and enjoy, hopefully. But like I said, we are working on our. We have worked through. I'm sorry, our first stretch goal, which will be an add-on to the Kickstarter of adventures called Lujor's Alchemist Cookbook. A neat little idea.
A very, very cool supplement where you can add some potions to your campaign. And then the other thing is you sort of add kind of something we're going to talk about later with design in your games, the ingredients and how your players can put them together. So actually,
Absolutely.
even putting them together can become a little adventure or a quest or whatever.
Yeah,
So
and
it's
I'm
very
gonna
cool. I love it.
let me take a moment here. I'm just gonna read you guys the little blurb about this. For years, the Gold Dragon board named Loser. I don't know. I apologize. I'll give you the correct pronunciation for that. Lujor. Has been traveling the world and experimenting with various ingredients. Now his works have been combined to create this document for you and your players. Within its pages, you will find 50 potions with ingredients and instructions for player characters to brew them in game. A section on the ingredients and where to find them, as well as a character level and DC requirements to successfully brew the potions. So our homebrew is about fantasy brewing. Gotta love that.
And and you just made me think to take the Beck song "Loser"
Okay.
and make like a song parody and put that name in it,
Well,
and then like
it's
have all the potions and the ingredients in the song. Ooh,
no, I'd say
check that out.
it's funny that you mentioned that. One of the things, a new friend to Dungeon Studios, which I've seen posted a bunch, a series of songs with the lyrics swapped out parody style to D&D stuff. So
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It'd be cool. That's a nice twist.
it is a nice twist. And if you're part of our Discord, you join up and support the studio. Those are the kind of weird, nerdy things you can enjoy directly because we put that shit in our little chat room, the Golden Gnome Tavern, all the time. So we look forward to seeing you. Remember to hit like, share, and subscribe. Please check out our Kickstarter. Please support the studio. Join us on our website and everywhere else our content is, and let us know what you think.
Hey, I need play testers for this Saturday coming up. We're looking. Come on over.
Yeah, that is one of the cooler things. We talk about it on the show a few times. The idea of the creator slash consumer spectrum. And look, I know a lot of people love to play the games. They like to get the stories, but they themselves are not the people that create them. Well, If you're not the kind of person who's going to write or draw or create for Dungeon Studios, you can certainly help by consuming for Dungeon Studios, both through our various networks and socials and Kickstarters, but also as a playtester. You get to go through the modules, you get to see the horror that is the first draft of D&D stuff, and you can...
Yeah, it's not a horror at all. It's a lot of fun to see how the different mechanics work for different...
The games are... Well, I'm sorry. I misspoke. I apologize. It's great to be a playtester. It's terrible if you're in anything that I've written, because I use all the words and all the mechanics, so it doesn't always go so well. But it is a good time, and like I said, it's a great way to help create something. And, again, it may not be the same, serotonin boost as saying I wrote something and people bought it, but you can look at that and say, check that out. I helped them play. I play tested that. I helped them design that. I was a part of that process, and you can throw some nerd clout at your friends. And I mean, there's really nothing better than that. Let's be honest. So, before I get any further past the shameless plugs, I wanted to cover some shit that I forgot last week. So,
yeah,
if you haven't checked out episode 6, we interview RKDM, our friend Russell from New Zealand, a professional dungeon master, streamer, a beautiful voice. And sadly, the epic beard face was gone. I was shocked by that. He's such a young-looking dude. But we had him as our guest last week. We talked about a bunch of stuff. And one of the things that came up, well, actually two things, I'm sneaking two in this week, was some questions about the morality of games and how Vampire, one of his primary games, is different than, fantasy RPGs. We talked about that a little bit. We're going to do some more in-depth discussion today. But the thing that I forgot from last week was from our visit to the doctor's office, we talked about monoliths. Giant stone structures, or really could be made of anything. And I had failed to work a tie-in onto how you can use those in your game. So I had a couple of thoughts. Obviously, anything that you have that is old in your game, and we talked about this, Russell's homebrew world of Sinrael. I hope I didn't pronounce that wrong. I apologize if I did, Russell. But of Sinrael, one of the big things he has is lore and history on civilizations going back 30, 40,000 years in his game world. And a part of that...
Even in 5th edition, they've designed that game where they have the obelisks, the black obelisks that are standing everywhere. If I'll throw that in there. Keep going.
Yeah, no, not a problem. But he has these old structures that people can stumble across, fantasy monoliths, the same thing that we have in our modern world, everything from the obelisks, in Egypt out to Stonehenge and a bunch of other crazy things around the world. Some of my favorite stuff to research.
Megalithic sites, we were calling them.
I just watched a thing yesterday about a mysterious sunken Irish island that only appears once every 7 years. That was super cool.
Oh, that stuff too. That's great.
I love that kind of stuff. So, but back to monoliths. You can have them just to be there, just to show the players the depth in the setting that this was made by people so far long ago that it's been forgotten what it is. But some practical uses is, in my opinion, a puzzle would be the best way to kind of do this. I was thinking about modern stone structures and the clever things that we do. So,
you want to turn it into a puzzle?
You could certainly do. You could certainly turn it into a puzzle. What got me thinking about a real life thing, and we're getting close to some important World War II dates coming up here in the States, and it got me thinking. They built a monument in D.C. that at a specific time on Armistice Day, November 11th, at a certain time, these 5 stone pillars are aligned so that the sun perfectly goes through them, and it actually creates the seal of the United States Armed Forces on the ground, but you can only see it. It only happens at a specific time of day on November 11th every year.
Oh, I did not know this.
Yeah,
I'm gonna check this out.
Yeah, it's a pretty clever little thing. So I thought about that in game. So one of the things that you could do with the monoliths, if you wanted to have it just be something cool and not necessarily interactive, you can steal a page from Tolkien with The Last Light of Durin's Day. You can have a monolith that is just there, is nothing, until a specific time, in a specific circumstance, and then they see something. Or, if you want to let your players be clever, they can figure out that there must be some certain alignment. The full moon on the third day after the eclipse of the twin suns, whatever you got in your game world. But you can allow the players to use magic and mirrors and mechanical things to redirect the light to force the monolith to reveal their secrets. That gives you a very simple puzzle, a neat little interactive thing. Or if you're evil or if you're evil like me, you can actually have it be a secret trap and they blow themselves up. But that's just how I do things.
Now it's funny you say that, because now, like, when I designed my one campaign world, the Old Forest, I threw in some monoliths in this one section where everybody has to journey there, and it's a place to get a boon.
Okay.
But you have to journey there to get the boon, and then you got to get yourself somewhere else. So, sort of a place of augury. So using it a little bit differently.
No, that's
I definitely could talk about this more. Talk about design.
Well, yeah, we're gonna get into some more deep stuff. I'll tell you though, it's one of those things too, and every veteran DM knows this. Some of the best things in your game is the paranoia of the players. They can write whole sessions for you. And again, just throwing a monolith out there, some big out of place thing that doesn't jive with the setting that you've established so far. Like Doc said, just a giant stone pillar in the woods. They will monkey around with that shit for hours, terrified they miss something, hopeful they'll find something.
It's so funny. I did that in a test play once. There was something like a pillar and it had an inscription on it, and man, we got lost there for an hour and a half. And I'm like, gosh, I was supposed to finish this test play tonight. But it's great. Like you said, the suspense part of it is awesome. The other part is having ley lines in your world. Russell jumped right into the vampires, and we asked him about monoliths. But having things like ley lines where magic works more powerfully in between or nearby these sites is another really cool way to use them in your campaign as well. Just
Absolutely.
To put that in there real quick.
And not to skip ahead to the end of the show where I talk about shit that I hate, I was just reading about the how little they did with one of the more unique features of the Dragonlance setting. Originally in the material, both in the books, the novels, and in the modules, the phases of the three moons are extremely important because they have a very big impact in the level of power that the wizards of the world have, right?
Okay.
In the new version, apparently...
Don't tell me.
Oh, dude, it's terrible. So apparently...
No, really?
Oh, yeah. Apparently you just pick a phase of the moon that you like the most. You can change it every day, and then you basically just pick the phase of the moon that is today's phase of the moon. I heard a few things about it. It sounded super lame. Didn't capture
there was some concept of the real time and passage of time, and
well, yeah, you had in the original materials. Actually, I think I actually had.
Right, we talked about this before. I'm just wondering if they're trying to go with something like that again. But
here's the thing:
they can do whatever they want. Really,
you can.
Come
on. I actually have the campaign setting like right to my left here. Not that you guys can see me, but one of the big things is you got a moon tracker. So the the good moon. Cycled the slowest, and the neutral moon lunitary was kind of a mid road, and then the evil one was shifting phases very fast, nuitary. Okay. But the DM would have to track that. It was relevant because obviously it would affect your decisions in game, what you wanted to do. So I get trying to have simpler mechanics. Lord knows I make mine way too complicated. So I understand it. It makes me sad.
I wonder if those things could become a mechanism of a campaign, like in a virtual campaign. Could they just run automatically?
Well, that's the thing. So here's the thing. I have some lofty ideas about this. I realize that the kind of game that I like, and I'm a math nerd, simulationist, nightmare mode game player. That's what I like. I like tracking ammo. I like there being various levers.
Yeah, there's got to be some limits.
Yeah, I like there being levers in the game that you can use to ratchet up the tension or create drama, which is not the current design philosophy, unfortunately. But I like that kind of stuff. But I realize that for it to do the things that I want to do, to have the depth and complexity that I would like, we need to reach a point where the technology is integrated into the gaming in a much more seamless manner. Because otherwise,
That's true.
like happened with our playtest Titan Speak, for those of you looking to get our Kickstarter, it's one of the many modules that are in there. There were a few sections where I had lofty ideas for how a room would work, ideas that were awesome, in my opinion, that would have created like a unique and challenging bit of gameplay, some unpredictability, and would have fit thematically, mechanically, were a giant, slow, painful dice rolling nightmare. So I understand that you can't have all that stuff, but someday
Yeah.
technology will be there for that, and it will be awesome. And obviously, a lot of people are dabble in programming and different things, and a lot of this stuff is not super complicated to set up. You can do a lot with even basic basic Office kind of software, Word and Excel. You can do a lot of stuff in those.
Well, I even think it's the level of the gamer, though, too. Like some gamers may enjoy coming to the table where there's that much math going on. You have those types, so you can't rule that out.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, let's get into a section that we skipped over last week because we had a guest. We're going to bring it back right now. We're going to talk about your week in gaming. So, Doc,
Gosh,
how did it go?
it was a big, big, big week of me gaming. We in my Raven Brew
All
campaign.
right.
They had left the Abbott's location and went to the winery. Oh, spoilers out there, guys! If you're out there, but I've homebrewed so much that I don't think anything I'm saying can be in a book or out of a book or from second, third, or fourth, or fifth, or maybe even sixth edition. Who knows? But what happened more interesting was they get to the Wizard of Wines and they're a lot higher level. So I did it that the druids are already there, everything's already poisoned. But one of the badass Peace Lily cleric just threw this wave of energy through the area, and I kind of slipped it as a DM for her. This radiant energy spell. I forget what it is offhand, but she proposed it. It sounded really great. So everything got devastated in the winery, and they had to go in and figure out what was going on. And then they find out that the ritual's happening down on Druid Hill, and we got to get out. We got to figure out what's going on here and get down there real quick. And they get down there, and I have stacked it up where the druids and the berserkers come out of the mud, and that map is huge. The scale is humongous. I don't know. Have you ever DM'd that or played any of
No, I'm
that?
familiar. I'm familiar with
All right.
that
All right.
stuff,
But
but I haven't
anyway,
done it.
so the combat is getting really tricky for them. And this crew is not one that's going to have their first encounter with Strahd at the dinner table. So they recommend Strahd showing up on his nightmare for this scene. So I had him show up at the conclusion. And then meanwhile, the druids are also, I can't say this part because if they're listening, they're
Yeah,
going to know.
yep. Let's
But
just say it's
you know what?
exciting.
I'm gonna get them anyway because if they're not listening, the hell with them. All right. So meanwhile, the druids are like kicking up the enchanted evil plants are coming up. So they got a lot of stuff they got to contend with that they don't even know what's going on right now. So I'm very very pumped with that one. Then meanwhile, over at the old forest, which has been that roll random campaign,
Mm-hmm.
on the way there, they hit invisible berries as a random encounter. And I did it where they had to pick them and see how many were ripe and unripe because I didn't want to put too many in the game, but I wanted to put some in the game. So two thieves were scouting ahead, found the berry bushes and got a whole bunch. And then they get to this cavern of the drowned god, which is, where they're supposed to start this exploration. And the two rogues go in there invisible and they sort of, they have a big Neo-Otug fight before. I don't think they use Neo. I think they're just called Otugs now, or whatever. Am I saying that right?
That's one of the many monsters in D&D that I don't think there is a correct way to pronounce the
How do
name.
you pronounce that so we can just
I no clue.
okay, anyway, so then they get invisible, they get past a shambling mound, they do some really cool perception checks, miss some shriekers and make a turn in the cavern, and pass by some troglodytes, stay real stealth, like they're really, really doing great. Switch directions, end up in a troglodyte shaman's cave. They overpower him, kill him, find a secret door, get to the troglodyte chief, and now the whole thing's turned into a mass because now all the invisible rogues are being seen. The rest of the party members are in the cave. All the troglodytes are alerted to be continued. So it was like, yes, both of my campaigns are like,
Dude, it's nice when it naturally when you naturally hit the end of the session and you're at a good cliffhanger.
yeah,
You don't have
yeah.
to force it. That's
So
that
it's very,
is
very
pretty cool.
successful for both of those campaigns this week in game.
And I know we don't have a version to show you guys, but I will tell you, Doc shared with me something he does for his players, a little video montage for the sessions and whatnot. And it was pretty cool, man. It gets me fired up. A little bit of music, some imagery. You kind of get some idea of what's going on, and you can really piece together the timeline of your game from that.
Well,
it's a very cool
even
feature.
more, what's really more interesting to me, it started when I started as a player, I started doing it to remember the games. And then when I started DMing again, I started doing it for each game. Like each game had an image for a module, kind of thing. And then somebody said to me, "Hey, why don't you put them all together?" So that's where that came from.
No, I like it. That's a good idea. So for me, I got away from murder-based role-playing a while ago. So I use milestones, and then what I try to do is I try to title all the milestones. Sorry, I try to title the major milestones that they're going after, like you would chapters of a book or titles of an adventure. Right. So they're and then once they've started something and they know enough about it that the title won't be a spoiler, I will throw it onto their D&D Beyond notes, and it'll say something. So it'll say like my current campaign, solve the mystery of the Ashbark Swamp, or what do they call it? I have one coming up called A Crown Upon the Wind, things like that. So they can see the title of it once they're kind of deep into it. And then what I wanted to do and never got a chance to do was actually take, a roll of paper, make a nice little wall hanger out of it, and write the sections that were succeeded.
Like a flow chart for them to follow.
Yep. So they would come in, down to my little nerd space, the Seat of Grom, come down here, and I'd have it hanging on the wall, this litany, this banner of accomplishments.
That's awesome.
That you would build. That's what I want to do. I haven't done that because I'm a slacker, but that's what I wanted to do. Yeah, my week was nice. I didn't have a play test this week because I had forced everyone in the last 5 weeks to deal with my stuff, and now we're in the process of rewriting. But in my own home game, missed a couple people. There were some weather issues and a few things that were of concern. But we got together and we got into advancing a bit of the story. They were offered patronage, by a wealthy benefactor. The price of admission was engaging in a completely legal, no gambling whatsoever, and definitely not shady process of of resolving grievances during the time of the dead moon in my game, where there are the laws of the soul of the moonless soul, where they worry that men will just go crazy without the eyes of the silver sentinel upon them. So to resolve grievances peacefully, they're allowed, if they encounter somebody who has aggrieved them, to call them out as long as they are in front of a fire tender, an official of the city. So they can call for champions to aid them as well if they want to resolve it through violence. And it just so happened that the characters were there, and one of them happened to volunteer because they believe so strongly in the cause. And there was definitely no gambling whatsoever. But what was fun about it is I put together some rules to deal with. Well, I have a lot of homebrew rules that are designed to make things a little more interactive. That rules as written really aren't. One of them is a system I use for breath. So instead of it just being you can hold your breath for 11 million minutes, there's a bit of a timer on it. And then the other thing that I had done is trying to think of ways to do various contests and games. One of the places they stopped and apologize in advance. I try to tie things together in my game with in-game language. So the terms might be a little. It gets kind of term heavy, but they stopped at a tabernae, a fortified truck stop, if you will, along the road across the open plains. They stop at one of these, and they got in the barkeep, the proprietor.
Tabernae.
Tabernae. Yep.
Where does that come from? Is that?
It is. Its root is in Latin.
Okay.
So yeah. So this section of the game, excuse me. The civilization is kind of a Roman Empire analog.
Right, that makes sense then.
Yeah, so to tie it, I have there's different analogous cultures that make up the various provinces, but the dominant one are the Entranti, who are your kind of Latin Italians, in the Roman Empire-esque. So I use Latin as kind of the base language. So the terms all tie together. So you have tabernae.
Nice.
And whatnot. So they stop. So they stop at these at the Requies Sylvanius, dedicated by a legionary half orc who had survived a hideous wound but saved his commander. And so I'm like, well, I want to have something unique for the guy. So a few years ago I got sucked into the world of watching Russian slap fights on the internet, which are some of the most ridiculous things I've ever fucking seen. I cannot recommend it enough to you. There is nothing quite as fulfilling as watching somebody get the shit slapped out of them.
No, thank you.
They're great.
No,
I will send you.
Let's not even talk about it anymore. Go.
I'm gonna send you one offline so you can check it out. Anyways, believe me, they're worth the watch. But no, so I'm like, okay, well, cool. I don't want to have a fighting pit or a brawl or anything. I want there to be this, test of manhood. And what's more manly amongst the orcs than to slap the shit out of another dude? So I'm like, well, I gotta have rules for it, because if I go with hit points into hit rolls and everything, it doesn't really translate, right?
Right.
So
this makes sense.
Yeah. So the rules that I put in there are the same ones I got to use for this little street fight, because it was bare knuckle brawl, and if you start doing class levels and hit points and everything, it just doesn't translate well, in my opinion. So the system I put in, I think, is pretty simple. You have your if they're moving, obviously in the slap fight you're not moving, so there's no armor class.
Right.
But in the fist fight, your armor class, your dexterity, and base 10, your dexterity, and then if you have any other cheaty stuff to put in there, like if you're a monk, you get your wisdom, and so on and so forth. So you need to roll over that number to hit them. However, damage, instead of being the current system, works as follows. Your total roll needs to exceed their constitution, and then anything over their constitution is the damage you deal.
Okay.
So if they have a 15 con and a 12 AC and you roll, and your total score is like a 13 to hit, you hit them, but it's a glancing blow. It doesn't really do any damage, right? And then the more you hit them, the more damage you do. So it still rewards you for high strength or dex. It rewards you for...
You're such a math person.
100%. Yeah, I like it.
You're such a math
and then we worked in your knockouts. If you do 10 or more damage in a single shot, or if you get a natural 20, you have a chance to knock them out. They make a con save and whatnot. And as expected, the fight did not last very long. The giant murderous fighter just two-shot this guy. So not as dramatic. It went exactly the way I thought it was going to go. Maybe a little anticlimactic.
Okay.
But it ended with a mount on the ground, a little MMA for you, and then there was a series of ground and pound shots, and that was all she wrote for our poor gladiator, if you will. So, but it was a good session. The best part, though, I'm sure you've heard the story before. The heroes borrow horses from a loose acquaintance, a friend of a friend, if you will.
Okay.
And then, of course, they leave them to get slaughtered out in the wilderness. Cart gets ruined. Horses get killed.
They always find an ill fate.
Yep. They get back to the NPC, and he goes, "Okay, you're going to bring back the horses now? Oh yeah, they're dead. You killed the fucking horses? Oh my god. Okay, where's the wagon? Oh, it's destroyed too. The wagon's fucking destroyed. How are we going to get out of here? We can't carry all this shit. Now we're stuck. Fuck you, man. You fucking owe us horses." My whole table is cracking up. So I do terrible voices. I apologize to everybody and anyone who hears them. But My week went well, though. It was pretty good, though. It was a good little session with some people missing. I would have liked, unfortunately, the player who was picked to be the champion, unfortunately, couldn't make it this week. So he got to miss out on his character's moment, but it is
Oh
what it
yeah,
is.
yeah, that's a bummer. But
None. Yeah, it sucks for him, but we all had a good time. So, anyways,
all right.
with that being covered, let's turn our attention and take a little visit to the doctor's office. Doc, what do you got for us?
Oh, I'm very excited today. I have a new magical Q&A, and we're going to talk about one of my very interesting topic.
Okay.
What do you know about crystal balls? I love saying balls, by the way. It's just great.
Right.
It's a great
Well,
word.
it is.
What do
It
you know
is a
about
wonderful.
crystal balls?
That was my friend's for the longest. He's a little bit younger than I am. For the longest time, every one of his characters in video games was balls. It would Ball, and then as many Z's as he could cram into the game. So
Wait, I got to stop because I was a science teacher for a lot of years, and
Yeah.
one kid made a science fair project on a big board. Kid didn't have a lot of money, just a big pen. He did a whole thing, and the title was just balls. And you know what else? This kid did. He was a math kid and did everything by hand in big pen with a ruler. This kid won the science fair. I was so proud of him.
Well,
He had
good.
nothing. He
For
beat all the kids that had, the great stuff. But anyway, and
Yeah.
the title was just
balls.
balls. It
I
was
love
great.
it. All right, so crystal balls. So let me run through what I know, and then you can hit me up with the angle you're going at.
Yeah. And then we'll go back and forth.
So clearly, used by charlatan scammers and seers for an eternity, the crystal ball supposedly functioned in some way, allowing them to see through and perceive things beyond the veil, seeing
All right,
into the other, into other realms or spirits or whatever. In modern gaming, we use them as they're a spell focus, which takes the place of some material components.
I always used to think of modern gaming as artifacts. You have the orb of the dragon kind. Those things are tossed in there.
It shows up all the time.
All right. Now when we look at the history, and like I said earlier about wanting to make a character, it goes to the Druids.
Okay.
And we go back to what we were talking about with megaliths, and the monoliths, the same people that set those things up. And the other thing that's really cool is, 2000 BC, those Druids were also using not crystal balls.
Not crystal balls?
No. And that's what's really, really cool. Hang on a second. They were used for scrying, and they would use a green. It's called beryl crystal.
I've heard the term BERYL. I've heard that term before.
Yes. Right? Now here's the thing. Now there's a weak connection to that one. It says the Middle Ages. So that kind of puts you in 15th century AD.
Okay.
When it talks about it being beryl. But before that, they even talk about them being obsidian and black and being reflective surfaces and not being translucent surfaces.
Well, like the Palantir, I think, is a good example of that from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
The Seeing Stone, but it's black.
Right. No, that's a perfect example. And it would figure that he would be that versed. And then they talk about using them for scrying as another article for scrying. And we've talked about a few scrying articles now with the Ouija board. And then, of course, ley lines. You can use a crystal ball to detect ley lines. We were talking about that with the monolith. So that's another connection. Now, this is the part I love, is the Elizabethan era in the 1500s. Okay. Queen Elizabeth I, educated in astrology, met this gentleman by the name of Edward Kelly and John Dee. Now, Edward Kelly and John Dee were spiritualists, and they used crystal balls. They also used balls. What's funny was they thought they had contacted God, right? They also wife swapped. They were told to wife swap, which is also kind of funny.
I just want to point out, why is it that every religious gathering eventually ends up with the head guy saying, "I need to sleep with all your wives"?
Right. So that makes it really interesting. The other thing is they came up with a language with an alphabet, and I asked you to take a peek at that earlier.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
The Incachian language, which is considered a heavenly language, thought they were speaking to God.
I think it's well. Is that okay? So you said said is it Enochian?
Maybe I'm saying it wrong. Yeah, Enochian.
Like
That sounds
Enocia. Yeah.
Yes. Are you familiar with that at all?
Well, I am. I'm gonna admit something.
All right, go ahead.
I'm gonna admit some dirty things right now. My wife has gotten me hooked on a few shows over the years, and one of the ones that I got super into because of her was the Supernatural TV series.
Okay.
Which I would recommend to anybody who is a game master or a player. It's a wonderful show. It deals with supernatural horror stuff, different monsters. It's very much a modern day version of The Witcher, because if you're familiar with that series and the games in particular, right? Everything goes around finding the weakness, finding what's the correct item. I can't remember what they're called now. My freaking brain's not working. But the gameplay of the Witcher series revolves around that. So you have a Starogi. It's a Polish folklore vampire, I think, if I remember correctly.
Okay, where are the balls in this? Where are the balls?
I'm getting to the balls. Hold on. To beat it, you have to have a certain thing you rub on your sword, and then the fight's easy. And if you try and kill it without it, you get the shit kicked out of you. Supernatural is that same thing, where the weekly episodes deal with different monsters and everything, and that's kind of how it goes. It's formulaic. It's a good show, great drama. I'm a huge fan of it. And in that, they get to a point where you find out demons are real the whole time, but you get to a point in the show where you find out that angels are real and God is real. And then the show kind of goes forward from there with a bunch of different storylines that are tangentially connected. But the angels, this is where I'm getting to the connection. Okay. The angels, who are dicks and thus have balls, I had to work in there for you somewhere. No, but the angels they use Enochian. That's the language that they write in. And the connection to the game for me, and this is my shameless admission, I've stolen some of the lore from the show about how certain things work, because I think it's cool. Demons having like telekinesis, for example. I stole that shamelessly. But also, when I do artwork for the games and when I'm creating items and documents and things, which I still forgot to put up the demon contract, but anyways, one of the things that I use was you can find the Enochian language that they use in the show that has all the symbols, and on the show when they use magic. Right. And they'll draw runes and everything, and they draw. Some of them are done in Enochian, for certain spells, and they have a very similar page to what you have here. So I've stolen that both visually and conceptually. I love it. So that's my shameless admission. I am not the originator of all the things in my game. I apologize.
All right, here's another one for you, just to throw this one out there. Those letters end up getting used in the original Stargate movie.
Around the Stargate, right?
Around the Stargate. Yeah. So that's kind of a nice little media connection. We're
okay, so explain this to me now, because I'm sure this is in your wheelhouse now. So the spiritualists use these, I assume, to claim that they were writing the divine language or whatnot.
How does this work? And they use the term celestial. So I wonder if that's where we stole that term.
Where we boosted it from?
Yeah,
makes sense. Well, no, I'm going to say no, because the nerd knowledge for you.
Okay, go ahead.
The Chinese religious system of antiquity, I want to say it's Taoist. I might have that wrong. I apologize if I do, but it focuses on the heavenly emperor and the celestial bureaucracy.
Okay.
So I think that's the oldest.
But it's interesting. Now you remember you said about Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. Yeah. These guys use the black obsidian orb.
Okay.
Kind of interesting too.
Yeah,
for that one out there too.
Yeah. So how does this relate to the seers? Though it's I cut you off before you got to that part. So Queen Victoria, astrologist.
Oh
crystal
no,
ball user.
and then they wrote this heavenly language together, and they were the official astrologer
Oh,
of Queen Elizabeth.
so did they claim to get any of this from using the crystal ball? Was that their means of seeing the
Yeah,
divine?
yeah, that was their means
Okay,
of seeing the divine. Yeah, that was really their big claim to fame. And then, of course, like I said, they wife swapped. Um,
which is an even
now,
bigger claim to fame,
yeah,
I guess,
now
depending on the wives.
now it's there's some other interesting stuff here.
Hit
They
me.
talk about Gina. I'm going to jump around a little bit.
Yeah.
Did you ever hear of Jeannie Dixon?
Not off the top of my head, but once you start talking, I might remember something. Go.
All right. So we jump up to the 20th century. Okay. We're talking 1950s here. Jeannie Dixon brought crystal balls into the public eye of America, predicted that the election in 1960 would be won by a Democrat. She also said he would go on to be assassinated using a crystal ball.
Really?
Yes.
I got to tell you, I am a gigantic fan of doomsday prophecies. I believe that if this is not really a term, I have it coined it for myself. I am an apocalypticist,
Okay.
a fan and aficionado of all things apocalyptic. I love the whole thing with the prophecies and whatnot. So I didn't know there were any. I didn't know there were any related to people using crystal balls. That I didn't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. And then she goes on to advise Richard Nixon and even goes into helping Nancy Reagan, advisor of Nancy Reagan.
Oh, it's that lady.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
I do. I did know. I didn't know the name. I did know that Nancy Reagan had a astrologist on staff. I knew that.
Okay, okay. Now they were also known as gazing balls.
Okay.
When you go way, way back to Europeans,
All right.
they were also used as garden globes, right?
Okay.
1930s and 1920s.
Well, I have two questions
Going
for that then. Do you know who
okay.
had the biggest balls of them all?
ACDC had the
Thank you very
biggest
much. You
balls
got
of
the
all.
song
I
reference.
mean,
5 points to you.
come
Ding, ding,
on.
ding.
I'm gonna have to write that spell. That's gonna be a great. That would be a great rock and roll spell. Big
I like it.
balls. Oh my god.
My second thing though, regarding the balls,
Okay.
that I had though, besides my terrible music pun, as these have been used and everything, like I said, you're going through the different jumping around different times and everything. Does any of this connect to like the crystal skulls, or
You know what? It does. I have not got a connection to that, but that's interesting. You
okay?
brought that up. We keep going. Let's keep moving
All right.
forward here. So then we talk into when we talk about Jeannie Dixon. She made some other predictions that were wrong.
Yep.
She said that Alec Baldwin would fall terribly ill in 1997.
Okay.
She said that Ellen DeGeneres would crash a presidential inauguration. She also predicted that 1953 would be the beginning of World War III. So,
Right.
you gotta look at
Well,
that as
all right,
kind of a
really.
weird.
Well, hang on a
Go
second
ahead.
though. Let's not get it. Let's not dismiss Miss Dixon just yet. I want to point out a
No,
couple of things.
no.
So, as a lover of all things apocalyptic and of prophecy stuff, some of the big ones like the prophecy of the popes or the Bible code. Are you familiar with any of these?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay,
Go
I
ahead.
love all of this stuff.
Yeah, I love this stuff.
Here's the thing though. So, the questions that you would have to ask of your seers: one, what accuracy rate is good enough to not be dumb luck? But more importantly, is the idea of context, right? So you say, oh, well, she said that World War III was going to start in 1953. Well, that's ridiculous. Well, hang on though. Let me ask you this though. Doesn't that line up with the start of the Korean War, which is America's initial foray into geo-global conflict with communist China and the larger communist world, the communist world at large, which, technically speaking, if that ends up being the adversary of World War III, you could make the claim that it started with the Korean War.
Yeah, but then you wonder if some of these are like self-fulfilling prophecies or just, did Alec Baldwin become famous because he did not become terribly ill in 19 like who was Alec Baldwin when she made these predictions in 1908, you know what I mean?
Right, right.
Who was Ellen DeGeneres then when she said these kind of stuff?
Well,
And
yeah,
then
but that's the same thing as you can. Well, here's the thing. This is the thing with all this prophecy stuff is that you can pick it apart on its merits And, and you know, if you're a true believer, you can, you can twist the logic however you want to make it fit. But at the end of the day, like the most famous, I think, example of how close they can be, and then, which makes you question if you're going to dismiss it, is Nostradamus' quatrain referring to the Second World War, where he names the second Antichrist as being Hister.
Right.
One letter missing and rearranged with Hitler. So here's the thing, that's pretty close.
Right. No, there's a lot of those.
So do you say, well, it's not exactly right?
No, it makes sense. So go ahead.
No, so that's the thing with the Bible code, and I find this shit fascinates me. But the way the Bible code works is you take the Hebrew Bible, and you put in words as references, and then you put in a skip pattern. I'm boring the shit out of everybody here. This is super math nerd stuff.
Yeah, no, because this is a whole nother magical topic.
Right, but so you say, okay, I want to look for let's see, we'll use Yitzhak Rabin, the Israeli prime minister that was assassinated, right? So after the fact, they're searching the Bible to see if it was coded in there, and they say, okay, we're going to look for the words assassin and prime minister, and we'll skip every 5 letters or whatever they use, right? They just pick a random number, right? It goes through the text, and it looks for anywhere in a certain section, I think it's 16 by 16 characters, where these words show up, right?
Yeah.
And the one for Yitzhak Rabin, it's got prime minister. The word assassinate actually cut in the skip pattern they use, cuts across the word prime minister, and then somewhere in the same section it says assassin will assassinate. So again, there's you don't know how it works behind the scenes. There could obviously is probably a lot of fuckery that goes on with that stuff. If it's fake, who knows? But it's interesting. But they only really find these things after the fact when you know what to mix them with. Otherwise, you're just taking a shot in the dark, and maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. Who knows?
All right. Well, now I got an interesting one for you.
All right. Hit me.
Now, we were talking about in previous shows about the Ouija board, and everyone wanted to contact the dead. And that was the late 1800s, 1890s. Then you go into the early 1900s, right? The crystal ball becomes the weapon of choice, the weapon of the supernatural. Now, the other thing is, it also gets aligned with the term they use is Roma or gypsies. It also gets aligned with women for some reason over this period. And there's also one person that stands out as the great person. Have you ever heard of the Great Alexander? The man who knows.
Definitely not Alexander the Great. So no, hit me up. What do you got?
All right. So he was a 20th century performer. He was the highest paid mentalist in America.
Okay.
He was armed with just a crystal ball. He would answer audience questions from sealed envelopes. And his powers were always up for debate. And then he also published a book called The Life and Mysteries of the Celebrated Dr. Q. So anyone named Doctor is cool for me.
Okay.
And then it's a Dr. Q, so that's even better. And actually, his book does reveal how he deceived gullible clients and audiences.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's...
And now wait.
Right.
Let's get back to balls. He was married 7 times and sometimes more than once, woman at a time.
Was he married to Lucille Ball?
I don't know. I don't know.
Would be quite the connection. No, so
my gosh.
I like that. So obviously, the in-game connections for the crystal ball thing. Obviously, there's rules already around them. We talked about scrying and seeing and whatnot. But you mentioned having a spell, punnily named after that. And I can tell you right now, we all remember the iconic scene in Indiana Jones where he's running from the giant stone ball, right?
Right. No,
right.
Absolutely. And then they talk about Wizard of Oz.
Yep.
Really put that in American culture.
Okay.
David Bowie juggles 3 balls.
In Labyrinth? Yep.
Labyrinth. But
You know what's funny? He didn't do that.
Yep.
That's where you're going?
Thank you. Go ahead. Tell it.
No. They had a professional ball twirler, because that's a job, who would snuggle up, head to ass to David Bowie, wrap his arms around him, and he would do the ball juggling. But they were using it as a practical effect, so they had to shoot it so you couldn't tell it was a guy behind. It was the guy's hands behind him.
And you know what else gives it a big
that shit's fascinating.
Shout out?
What?
The movie Big.
Okay.
The machine where he goes for the fortune telling has a crystal ball.
Zoltan, right?
Yes.
Zoltar,
yes. And then, of course, one of the final legacies of the crystal ball, and some way you can add it into your games, is remember that a clear crystal ball with a light source can start a fire. So I always like to use them for puzzles.
A little bit of practical magic there.
Right. And the other thing they do is they invert images. So you can have writing on a wall or an arrow that could necessarily get inverted for a direction. They have to follow the dungeon using the inverted.
Use the crystal ball to find the directions. I like that.
Right.
It's clever. I wouldn't have thought. That's not. It's one of those things that I wouldn't have thought about. Because again, if you put a crystal ball out there for your players, how many hours are they going to spend trying to figure out what it goes into?
Right. Yeah.
What if you got to cast a spell with it? Or trying to destroy it. That's my fucking favorite. Everything's got to get destroyed. I don't understand where that comes from, but I didn't break my I tried not to break my toys as a kid, but other people did. No, but I like that though, using it so that they have to get the mirror image of stuff. That's clever.
And there's so many things. I really like to use them where they know what it's for, so it gets used. It's like you said, if it's a mystery, it just stalls the game out. So that's really become where I like to use them as things on purpose. I remember one campaign, we had a whole telephone system of globes, of orbs, of balls that, connected different players together so they could all talk to each other, the hotline.
I like that.
The bat phone.
Yeah, I think I like it. I think, but no, spell-wise, like you said, you were making a pun on the song there, but I think it'd be kind of cool to have a spell where the material component is a pair of small crystal balls.
And I believe there are a few. I know I've come across it before as well.
But I'd like to roll my balls across the floor and have them turn into giant marbles, like giant balls, and then crush people with them. That sounds fun.
I have to say this, this is a gratuitous plug.
Yeah.
The Misty Towers does have the biggest balls of them all.
Of our Kickstarter, anyways.
It does. There is a chamber with the biggest balls of
I just watched a video the other day about Dragon's Lair, and I remember that was one of the rooms I always had a problem with, was the little ball trap where you're in the little half pipe and the balls are just going up and down the sides and you got to dash through them.
Well, I can't say nothing, but I've got the biggest balls of them all.
I love it. All right, well, I think that concludes this trip to the doctor's office and brings us directly into shameless plug number 2 for the evening. Thank you guys for listening out there on the internet or in your car. We are the game brought to you by Dungeon Studios. Please check us out on our website, dungeonstudios.co, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. I finally remembered it. All right, look at me. But you can check us out on Discord, on all the socials. You can check us out on Patreon. Support the show. Support our various projects and endeavors, the Enron Chronicle.
Twitter.
And most importantly, our Kickstarter, which currently is fully funded. We have unlocked stretch goal number 1, Lujor's Alchemist Cookbook. Great homebrew resource for crafting of potions and whatnot. Something I'm a big fan of having in my games, modern games, is crafting of items. But most importantly, check us out at Kickstarter and support the project, because we're working on stretch goal number 2, which happens to be something near and dear to you, Doc. It is 10 plug-and-play encounters.
Oh, yeah. I forgot we're even going there.
Oh, 100%.
These are awesome. Okay, plug-and-play encounters, what we talk about, the team sits down and we get together and we talk about just an encounter. So, when you're playing and you roll a random encounter and a monster comes up, well, here's the deal. We do let's say, a cockatrice. So we all sit down and we talk about like, how can we make this a different type of encounter? And in this one, there's a mating going on, and three males are like jockeying for position to mate with the female. And you're out there and you see this whole encounter
This sounds
going
ball
on.
adjacent, by the way.
Yeah, it was more balls. This is all about balls, man. And what's cool is if you let one survive, it can possibly mate with the female in the nest. And you got to do everything right, get the right rolls and all that kind of stuff. You even have a chance when the male comes out, he's so satisfied that he wants to be your friend and becomes your companion, which is kind of neat. Never thought about a cockatrice as a companion, and it sort of adds a whole new boon kind of thing to the game. I like to expand campaigns, and that's what we talk about. These encounters are sort of really, expand what you're doing. We talked about monoliths.
Mm-hmm.
The team talked about another one where we have you encounter a monolith, and instead of having negative saving throws, we're talking about positive saving throws. And everybody sorts. Some people can see the monolith glow. Some people can hear the monolith singing. Some people can smell something in the air. And you give the character sort of a weird situation they have to encounter and figure out, because we were talking about this suspense building type encounter, So we're trying to do that with these encounter builders. And then everyone sort of experience the monolith differently and have to figure out what's going on. And in some cases, it can be a boon to some players. And then, you got the murderous hobo who just wants to kind of knock the monolith down and destroy it. We got rules for that. So whichever way this encounter can go because of your team or your group, we have some suggestions for you. So they're really kind of a neat way. You can add them into almost any game, add them into a module, add them into a homebrew.
Yeah. Well, and
anything you're doing.
Yeah, take them, make them your own. And I know in a pinch, and we've all been there, where you sit down and you didn't have as much prep time as you wanted. And you need to chew up a session, or you want to get your players through a fight to level up. It's great to be able to snatch up one of these things and kind of work it in with a little bit of tweaking to fit your setting. So good to have. That's our second Kickstarter goal. So please support us. We appreciate it. Remember, we are just small, poor, sad, independent game developers looking to survive on your generosity. Please don't let us starve this Christmas season. Thank you very much.
Yeah, right. Thank you everybody who's already contributed as well. For
we have some wonderful people
starting to break our goals, man. That's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we certainly we gave a shout out last week to one of our larger donors to the Kickstarter. So again, Owen, thank you very much. And I hope to start building up the Patreon, and then we can actually shamelessly plug our Patreon supporters at some point in time. So look forward to getting to
shout
that
out
point.
to our partners too, because they've hit us up with some great ads that we've been able to share around and stuff, people that work with us. So thank you for all them. And big shout out to Josh, our CEO, man. He does a lot of work and he lets all of us be creators. So thanks, man.
Yep. Which I'm starting to worry that CEO Josh, who is also producer Josh, that I might have muted him by mistake, because maybe he's been yelling at me the whole time and I didn't know it. So, but that is what it is. Well, hey, what's great about this is I think when we were talking about this before the show, this dovetails nicely into a couple of things that we started talking about last week and didn't really get to develop. And, kind of my topic for the week, things that I wanted to get into in gaming, seeing a lot of what is going on here. And that's the idea of morality in the game. For the old school grognards, its alignment was the system, not a very good one, by the way, which will definitely be things I don't care for, which we're going to talk about. But it also works into game design. So I want to start with this idea for encounters. So I like to use monsters that I don't have to worry about being any sort of moral quandary. When I was coming up in gaming, it was very, very common to have games that were just murder fests. And there was never a question of, when you raid the orc camp, who's there, what's there, men, women, children, all that kind of stuff. I like the undead because they are a monster that it just doesn't matter. You murder them relentlessly. You don't have to think about it. Sometimes that's relaxing. But the idea, though, is we've matured as gamers and modern sensibilities have come around. This idea of the morality of your design, right? So you have a 10-pack of encounters that you worked on. Did you give any? I want to ask you in specific to the Kickstarter stretch goal, but also just in general from your design philosophy.
Right. Go
Did
ahead.
you work into any of those kind of ideas? Now I know for drop plug and play encounters, probably not, but does that play into your design when they're going to raid? Like you said, I was just said they're going to raid the orc and goblin camp. Do you put any thought into who and what's actually in the camp?
Yeah, absolutely. Not to give any of our plug and play away. I know over the year we played kind of a cool thing where we got sent by these elves to go get these manticore eggs, right? And when we turn up, we find out that it's actually, the elves have been exterminating the manticores.
Right.
And the manticores are, trying to protect their eggs. And, how do you approach that kind of a situation? So, when we're all, the creators and writers and test players are all playing scenarios like that and talking about how kind of cool and interesting it is, that's how, that's the design philosophy we're talking about.
Well, let me ask you.
So that's what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, let's break that specific one down. That's an interesting one. So
Adam, if you're out there, buddy, that's you, man. That was all Adam, man. That was his homebrew.
So the question that I throw out there for that, right? So it gets murky when you start to get into the idea of intelligent things versus monsters, right?
Right.
But
no, absolutely.
Fantasy games have a lot of bleed over in that category. So Manticore is a good example of that. I believe they are intelligent enough to speak. I think I'd have to look that up, but I think they have an intelligence score high enough that they can speak. So, this becomes the question. This becomes this idea of with morality in the game. So, if you show up to fight the Manticore, it's a big, scary-looking, lion-faced, flying monster with a spike tail.
Right.
You battle against that thing, and it's got a clutch of eggs. Well, you don't bat an eyelash to crush those eggs when you're done because you don't want more of these monsters roaming around. Well, what if the Manticore can speak? What if it pleads for you not to? I'm only protecting my children because I know what you adventurers do.
Intelligence 7.
Yeah,
Intelligence
so
7.
perfect, capable of speech, capable of
Right.
of intelligent thoughts, smarter than a lot of things in the game, like most barbarians.
And here's the other one. They usually serve wicked masters.
Yeah.
So maybe one's gotten free, and he doesn't have a master to serve, and just.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So that's the point I was trying to make, though, is, where do you draw the line on if that's going to matter? Now, I think a lot of this might be group driven, and you can definitely speak to this, Doc. So with your chronic gamers, maybe this isn't a problem, but you got Girl Scouts. So what would the Girl Scouts do with that Manticore encounter? What do you think?
No, and that's what I'm saying. They would love to be protecting the eggs and worrying and checking with the elves. I mean, their first random encounter was a unicorn.
Right.
I have 4 girls, and they're like, "Oh, what can we feed it? Can we be friends with it? I want to use animal handling."
Yeah, but that's a unicorn. That's a pretty. That's who doesn't love My Little Ponies? I mean, come on now.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It fell into that whole thing, but it's been the same way for them all the way through their campaign. They've approached every creature with sort of a neutral, a neutral approach, I guess.
Okay.
They've really been neutral in their moral compass approaching any creature.
Okay.
And they're fresh. It's the old school that just, I'm taking, these are bad guys. I mean, that's my last group with the troglodytes.
Yeah.
They're just like, they got to be horrible. They haven't questioned the troglodytes. They're just sneaking around. They haven't found out anything. They're actually chasing a wizard who's supposed to be hiding there somewhere. Meanwhile, they're just chopping up troglodytes.
Yeah. They just assume, they assume that they're a problem to be solved with a sword. I got you.
Right.
Yeah, see, as I got older in gaming, I started to think about that kind of stuff more and more. And it's one of the reasons, see how I cleverly work away into complaining about Wizards of the Coast here. It's one of the reasons, and things that I kind of dislike about some of the modern sensibilities, things that are being heavily pushed by Wizards. is, with their lore changes to things like the drow and orcs and whatnot. And again, not to rehash prior conversations, but I get it. People bring their own terrible baggage with them, and some people are horrible, awful, terrible people. So I get it. We're not talking about them. I know that happens.
Right.
But they start changing the lore on this kind of stuff. And one of the impacts of it, one of the mechanical things that bothers me about the design philosophy and doing that is that, one, I don't think they're making those changes for any sort of real tangible benefit to the game. I think they're doing it I think they're making a change for the wrong reasons. That's my personal opinion, but it doesn't have a direct mechanical impact, but what it does do is now it forces that moral decision on the players, and it's hilarious because it's the law of unintended consequences. You're making these changes because you don't want to force uncomfortable things on your players. You want to, they want to be inclusive to everyone. They want to be open and welcoming.
Right.
All
We
that
talk
stuff.
about this all the time, right?
But then, in the same stroke, you now have said, well, we now just made 80% of the monster manual things that you have to question if killing it is a good thing or a bad thing. So you're now taking people that may have just been enjoying the pure escapism of bashing monsters in the dungeon, like you're playing Gauntlet or Diablo, and now you force this on them. Well, are they really bad?
Well, no, and again, I think that's up to the campaign, and that's the DM and the players and the table. You gotta know the table. Again, we're right back to that whole thing: is your whole table and which way you're playing the game.
Yeah, but think about this though, and this is where I point out to be a problem. So before all this nonsense, right, modern day goofballery, right? If you got invited to a game, you joined a game at the local game store, you met new players. There was no question that when the orcs attacked the caravan, and then you tracked them down to their lair and you launched the assault on the camp. There was no chance that somebody in the group was going to go, well, hang on a second. Do we understand the means and motivations of these orcs? Maybe they're the victims. Maybe we've done something bad to them. You didn't have to worry about being in a scenario where other players might judge you as a person based on the choice you make in relation to slaughtering the bad guys of the adventure, right?
Okay.
So I don't know that that's a net benefit for the game. I don't know that it is.
Well, I think here's the thing too, though. A dick player is a dick player when you're playing Monopoly or you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, as opposed to, I see your point. I totally get your point there. I understand where you're going with that.
And now to kind of loop this back around to what we talked about with Russell, there are games out there, like Vampire is a story-driven game, and it's very character, personality kind of driven. Having those kind of choices and that kind of deeper level to the interactions is perfect for that game, because I think the players of that game are looking for that.
Well, I think here's the thing too. I mean, what are you looking for a new type of encounter? That's what we're trying to do with these plug and play encounters. I think that's something else to it, to add a little bit of flavor to the game.
Oh, fair enough.
Fair
enough.
And like you said, so it doesn't become so mechanically heavy, but might become a little more entertaining. Think about, what if you were stuck in a tar pit?
Right.
Besides it being difficult terrain and your movement is slowed, what if there was like some funny outcomes, like, you get stuck with feathers, and then the table gets to laugh about it. Oh, look, he got tarred and feathered.
Well, now, hang on a second. It's fun. It's funny that you mentioned that, right? That's a very common trope. I'm sure you got that idea in your head is probably from watching Looney Tunes when we were kids, right?
Okay. We're gonna go to your wokeness. Let me give you a different.
I'm just saying though, but this is what I'm talking about with the whole morality in gaming thing is you could stumble into that question. So, like, I don't do Adventurers League because I hate people, but.
Right.
But think about that. You join
now I've offended someone at the table because
I'm just saying, you join an online. Yeah, you join an online game, and you put that forward thinking it's a funny thing, and then you run it right into the buzzsaw of one of your gamers.
You do that. You can do that with anything.
I know.
I was a camp counselor once, and I said, "Hey, all the kids were like, we love water guns. We love playing army. Rambo was out. Hey, let's make a movie where we're all just shooting each other with water guns. And everyone falls down, but this one guy, it's going to be great. We had a great time making it. It was so much fun. You know what? My manager was even like, hey, let's show this at the end of the year. We showed it at the end of summer camp. God, I had parents come right up to me. What is going on in your mind? You making a movie about war with our kids? We were all having a good time.
They're kids.
Kids, we're having fun. What the and that was the early 80s, and that wokeness was already beginning, and we've evolved. Again, the scenario you're sitting in. I wouldn't have said tarred and feathered in that case. Actually, I was trying not to say what I'm writing about, so I was trying to use a
fair enough
metaphor.
Well, no, but this is the thing is, like I said, with the shifting landscape and whatnot, I'm torn. So I don't know that adding that level of morality is good for the game in general. I do think it varies from table to table, from group to group,
Again,
age group,
that's
and
what I'm
everything.
saying. Group to group. Like if you guys all want to play anti-paladins and there are no rules for it, we'll all make paladins. Everything will be necrotic damage instead of radiant damage, and we'll all kill each other in the next 3 hours. Let's go.
I like that too. It sounds good to me.
I mean, you could have a lot of fun doing that.
Right.
If you like playing that kind of game.
Yeah.
My big thing is, like you were saying, the game's writing this, and you look at it now, and it could go both ways, and animal handling, and people making friends with animals, and animal friendship, and all this stuff. There's a point where, like you said, where is the line?
Right.
When they're just big bad monsters anymore, and it's got to be drawn somewhere.
I guess. I mean, I don't know that there is a real net benefit in general for the game to kind of have this stuff forced on anybody. Not that you can't just ignore it because it's your game, but it is out there because it raises these things. But you make another interesting point about different play styles, and one of the things I brought up with Russell that I would love to have, we're going to hit up the second time, I think, is the idea with the narrative of the game and how we design those kind of things, given the moralities for the game. So,
Exactly.
Like I said last time, I think the idea of the hero narrative, I think that's dead and buried. I think from what I've seen with the modern people aren't interested in that. It's not what they came up with.
Well, no, I think the problem with Dungeons and Dragons is you have too many heroes at the table.
Think so?
Yeah. There's sort of this. I don't want to say it's soccer and everybody gets a trophy, but everyone at the table thinks their character is the lead role, and they want to know what's in it for them.
Well, that's. I mean, character,
and that the DM has to take that into account when he's running the story, so that everybody has their arc somewhere. Like you just said it. You said your friend missed the arc this week.
Yeah,
he missed his arc.
Right.
You try to do that as a DM. You try to make sure, and like you were saying, like those images you set on my campaign. Each week, somebody else may be the star as the DM. I think, Peace Lily's really going to fit in here, or Corin is really the halfling ranger is going to play a big role in this week's episode or whatever.
Well, I'll say so to a point that Russell made last week, and then I agree with 100%. And this is a good day one DM tip. When not only are you going to have a session 0, but you really should put out there a DM, like your philosophy document, essentially. Like this is
I think
this is the kind of game I'm going to run. Now I will tell you, this is a whole other quagmire to get into. I can't stand the idea of like the players with the player sensitivity stuff, and they built it in Roll20. The little this is not okay cards the players can flash you. I'm like, come on. Like,
well, I you know what? I'm half on the fence for that and half not on the fence with that. I know Chuck, our buddy over at Irrepressible role playing RPG, he did a whole checklist where when you play with him, you can say how far you want to go with stuff too. So in a way, it's good too, because if you want the goriest game possible, he can deliver that to you. But no, I mean, you got to know. I mean, it's like you said, it's the evolution of the 21st century and this wokeness that's around us everywhere. You have to be aware if you're going to be a DM. I mean, we needed to ask Russell about that too, but I think people who join his games know
Well, they're
what they're
paying
in
to
for.
be there, yeah.
Yeah, they
Well,
know
that's
what
my
they're
thing.
in for. Again,
See,
so
this
again,
is,
if you're paying, I think there is a thing about, yeah, you're going to have to fill out this form and say what you're in for and what you're not in for, what kind of game you want, what kind of game you don't want.
yeah, it's no. I like I said, this is where you and I disagree about the whole topic. And now, as a preface, before I start saying all the dumb stuff I'm going to say in a second, not every game is for every player, and yeah, there are things people don't like, and you shouldn't be a dick and try to make somebody uncomfortable or gross somebody out. It's one of the unfortunate worst things, and a very common thing on the internet is hearing the horror stories, especially from female players that have other players, or in a lot of cases the DMs, and there's a lot of real questionable stuff going on, and you're like, okay, like that shouldn't happen. I get that. And I do think it's very important for the DM to put out there, this is the kind of game I want to run, because there are some of those levers that change. Mature content, no mature content. Are we going to take a page out of Community's D&D episode, one of the best ever, by the way? And we're gonna have the character graphically explain and role play out their sexual encounter with somebody, or are we gonna fade to black and what happens? The classic,
right. No,
the classic more dirty than the actual art censorship pick from a Punisher cartoon, where he's gonna hook up with his secretary or whoever the character is, and the censors didn't want to have the scene of them under the covers. So instead, they replaced it with a picture of it was Nick Fury, not the Punisher. They replace a picture of Nick Fury and the secretary in bed with Nick Fury's gun, with his gun in the holster, which is far more suggestive than the actual panel they drew. So whoa, slow down a second. I don't know that this is what we're supposed to be doing, kind of thing. I'm fine with the DM putting that out there, but where my problem lies is one, and this is just my philosophy in general with a lot of this nonsense from the modern age. I don't think anybody should be given the power, authority, or the leeway, whatever term you want to use for it, to dictate to other people what stories they can and can't tell, what fun, what way they can or can't have fun.
Absolutely, yeah.
But by saying to a player, well, you can just throw the card up whenever you want, and I'll stop whatever I'm doing to change it to what you want. No. No, I'm not playing that way either. No, and that gets to my other point. My other problem with that, as a philosophy of tolerating that, is the game. Stories are built around drama and tension. You can't do that without villains.
Hey, let me ask you this though.
Yeah.
I know with my OG crew, it's far more a group decision and building of the story. If something comes up and we feel like it doesn't fit or whatever, or we need to alter or change, we talk about it as a group. Mm-hmm. I feel like my Chronic Explorers and the Girl Scouts sort of moves more towards me, even as a scale.
Right.
The Girl Scouts far more me, and then Chronic Explorers more me, and then my Raven Brew less me. But there's a point where even you're working with the players in the group storytelling, what works and doesn't work. Do you ever do that?
Here's the thing. You're going to have. So you're saying so.
No. Do you ever do that before you? Do you kind of, or are you like, no, it's all DM?
All right, I think you're asking a couple of questions at once, so I'll try to parse that out.
Okay.
So, the events that I kind of touched on this with Russell a little bit. The game world exists in spite of the players.
Right.
It doesn't matter what they do or know or want, what schedule they're on. Things happen when they're going to happen. The monster, like I said, if you hear the rumors that, like, oh, no, there's a dragon in the mountain there. I saw his red wings just the other day out eating my sheep. And you go to that cave, I don't care if you're level 1 or level 20, it's going to be a dragon because that's what it is. Right. If the backdrop for my current game it's the backdrop of my current campaign. It says right in the game document that the events of the game take place against the backdrop of what will come to be known as the Spring Fire Rebellion.
Okay.
So there is a rebellion brewing. And I told my players, I'll know this. The Entranti are brutal in their dealing with these things. So there's a certain line of shenanigans they'll tolerate, and then when it comes down to it, they will ruthlessly stamp out any threat to the Empire from within or without. That's how they are. The players all know that, right? So nobody has any illusions that if and when, and obviously it's gonna set off because it's called the Springfire Rebellion eventually.
Right.
When that starts, bad things are going to happen to people, innocent or otherwise. The players have the agency to choose how they respond to that, and whether they're going to be stay away from it, whether they're going to get involved on one side or the other. That's up to them. That's the community storytelling. But the event's going to happen regardless. If the players decide they want nothing to do with any of the machinations and politics of the Empire that are going on in the background, and they want to steer clear of this conflict, that's their choice. The conflict's still going to happen.
Right. No, that's
right?
yeah. No. That's where I'm with you.
Okay.
I'm with you on that. No,
now,
absolutely.
The other part of the question that you were asking was about change. I think was what you were getting at was, do I change the narrative elements based on player input?
Yeah, like let's say a player like screws something up, or it doesn't really play, or when the DM alters something to fit more, you'll say, "Does this work for you?"
Yeah, well, So here's I do this two ways. It comes up in my games. So one is, if I don't force plot hooks on anyone. And I have had plenty of them that are just failures to launch. Like people are just not interested. They're not into it. And if an event happens that forces a story arc, which does happen early in my campaign.
Right. Okay.
Where the players, something starts. And I actually, I'm one of the revisions I'm making because, again, another day one DM thing. This is a different topic, but except the fact that what you present for your players is almost always is essentially your first draft, and sometimes it sucks, sometimes it doesn't work, and we don't always have the luxury of working on fixing things ahead of time to rewrite them before you play them. Players are getting the first draft of stuff, and sometimes shit goes weird. But that being said, the intro to one of the arcs is it's kind of a forced thing, and I wrote it that way because. Like these are the events that are happening. And then I realized afterwards that the first time I ran it, the players were super into the character and the whole idea and the like, oh, well, what the hell is this NPC doing out here in the middle of nowhere? And, they like that storyline. In my current campaign, it was 50-50. The people that could have cared less.
Okay.
And they felt kind of forced. So, big picture, I'm going to tweak that kind of stuff. Small picture in the game, I am like I said, I am constantly trying to tweak based around what they're interested in. So
no, I guess mine is more like esoteric. Like I think about when I was a player and we had our DM running the game, and there was this guy. We had inherited this mansion. We had gotten the ghosts out of it. We had sort of taken it over, and we got this guy to watch it. And we got to name him Salty John. And then, his personality we all got to sort of put his personality together with the DM.
Right.
And then the DM eventually just had him screw us anyway.
Right.
But he let us sort of buy into this NPC and be friends with him and joke around with him and be part of the family, and then use that kind of against us in a way. So in
classic evil DM fashion. I love it.
Right. But that's what I'm saying. Do you ever use that kind of strategy with your players?
So here's what I was asking. I haven't had it. I have not had it come up yet where they're directly involved in something like that. Where where it becomes what they want. I've been in a game where that happened. My Jamie,
Okay.
one of our playtesters.
Right. Yeah, I've met Jamie.
Yep. So he took a crack at running a game, and we tried Starfinder. Science fiction with the Pathfinder system. I had a great time, by the way. If he listens to this, it was a blast. I hope you don't think that we didn't enjoy it. We did. But there's some rules problems with the system. Anyways, so we're in the first mission. We're in a ship, and there's a couple of space goblins that are trapped in there. And we grease 2 of them really quick. There's a third one, and I'm like, well, shit, we got to have one to get information from. So he had mistyped we were playing online for most of the games. He had mistyped in the thing that Sapsy instead of Space Goblin, so SAPCE. So I'm like, all right, I grab Sapsy and I say, you will tell us what's happening. So we interrogate the goblin, make some rolls. He's like, okay, I guess. I go, all right. I go, don't worry. And I was playing a giant lizard guy, so I'm not that smart. That's actually one of the. I'll bring that up in one of the games. My little backstory for that. It was fun. I thought it was hilarious. I'll share it on one of the shows. But I'm like, all right, Sapsy, I have decided that you will live. So you are now part of the crew until I decide to eat you, kind of thing. So we forced this poor guy. He's like, he doesn't want to be with you guys. I go, that's okay. He doesn't have a choice. So we forced him to turn him into an NPC. And then because he was the best performing of all of us, he got promoted to Lieutenant Sapsy. So he was running the crew. I was the captain, of course, because there's no way I wouldn't be the captain. That's another conversation too, like personality types. So let me get to the meat of what I wanted. Well, let's see. Well, we talked a bunch actually. We're getting near a break time.
Way over. We're way
Yeah,
over.
so I'm having a good time. That's all that matters to me. Appreciate you guys that have stuck with us this far and listening.
Yeah,
I
thanks.
got a quick couple of things I want to share. I'm going to start a ghost story, and then we're going to take a quick little break. Hopefully, our
Yeah, and if
intermission
you are
video
with
plays.
us and you got something you want us to talk about, let us know too. Please.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, throw it again. Find us on Discord or our socials. Throw it to us. Shoot us a message. Leave a comment on the chat or in the chat for our Facebook live stream or on the YouTube videos, and we will happily look through your suggestions. We appreciate
absolutely.
any and all the interaction. So, what I was going to say was, I realized something a while ago. So, alignment was an old system that's mostly ignored now, and I don't think fits very well into any version of the game, really. It seems like it was kind of an afterthought mechanic, and it created this weird scenario where, players would pick it to start, and then might get punished for it, might not get punished for it, or would inevitably come to a time where they wanted to do something, and wouldn't be able, and you'd be like, oh, well, you can't do that because you're lawful good, not a very elegant system to solve the problem. And I have an alternate system that is way too complicated. Shocking, I know. That I tried using.
This is really interesting. You're bringing this up too, because
Right.
I was just looking at the Talisman of Ultimate Evil, which
Yep.
is in D&D Beyond, which delivers damage to both good and evil characters.
Yeah.
Which leads me right back to the whole thing I was talking about. What kind of campaign you're playing? You're not going to have that item in your campaign, or you're not going to have good characters going to get that to use it, are you? I mean, maybe they're going to get it to destroy it if they're good characters.
Yeah.
Or if the story plot, or you have somebody who's playing that they want to become evil, they want to become this terrible, evil anti-paladin. They've already talked to you about it, and they want to become the anti-paladin and kill everyone when they get there. I don't get, why is it built in like that?
I think
alignment isn't a thing anymore. Why is
well,
that
I think there are some things in the modern game that are holdovers to classic ideas.
Okay.
Alignment is one of those things, and originally in the old versions of the game, it was just good, neutral, and evil, and then they eventually added lawful, neutral, and chaotic and mixed them together.
Because they are building everything on Vecna now.
But the things, they were in the game as a mechanic because it mattered for certain spells. And because the game was a heroic fantasy game, you assumed the players were good and bad guys were evil. But as players will do, because they ruin everything, At some point in time, they're like, well, it says that there could be evil characters, so I can be an evil character, and then that's how all that nonsense started. I would say this. So we hit upon this, and this. I want to share this last little bit before we close the topic out, get into our intermission story, and take a quick break. I realized that no matter what system of alignment you had, the way players work, almost invariably, unless you're a trained actor and you're really familiar, or a writer where you're familiar with getting into the mindset of somebody who isn't you, I think a lot of players, especially new ones, are going to make essentially what are avatar characters. They are some mix of the player's kind of idealized self, mixed in with elements of the game, and then depending on.
It's very interesting you're talking about that. We'll get into this later too.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and depending on the kind of game that you're playing in and whatnot, that'll color it a little bit.
Yeah.
But for the most part, you end up with characters that are who the people are, which is why the classic line, which what my character would do, is kind of concerning in this context. Because that means that's what you would do.
You would do, right? Exactly.
So maybe I have to look at that. One of the things.
And I think that goes back to what you were talking about too. When we said this, good manticore, it's also who's designing it. Yeah. Someone designing something good or something evil too.
Well, this is another one of the things where Wizards is mucking around with this. You can play alignment. This idea that the monsters and the characters, whatever, that is their predisposition. And here's the thing: good people do bad things. Bad people do good things. There are plenty of stories.
Well, and there's interpretation too. There's interpretation and how you want to deliver it. I had just did Island of Dr. Monroe with these characters in my Raven Brew, and then they end up at the Abbey in Ravenloft, and he's experimenting with animals, but I did them as friendly mongrels.
Yeah.
And my players didn't know what to do. I switched it up on them.
Yeah.
So,
But also, like I said, this is one of those things where the game shapes it, and the idea that that especially in a fantasy world, that some creatures are just born bad, it allows you to, just like you said, to flip the script and to subvert that expectation and have a unique experience where one or a whole group, for whatever reason, don't turn out that way. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And the idea, and then it makes it magical. It's like I have this argument about magic items all the time. If magic is common, then magic isn't magical anymore. It's just commonplace.
Right.
Think of how freaking amazing it would be for a caveman to see you flip a light switch in a dark room and the whole place is illuminated. That would be mind blowing. But we don't even think about it. You have hot death and fire running through copper wires in your wood walls, allowing you to illuminate the darkness at the flick of a switch, and it doesn't murder you or run out. And we're like, meh, who cares? It's a light switch.
Well, we think it's not murdering us. And then I think about the cavemen with the monolith in 2001. That's the whole analogy right there. Thank you. I'm anxious for your story tonight.
No, I'm getting there. I got a couple of things to hit on. So the chat mentioned talking about Dragonlance. We brought up a couple of things about the setting and how underwhelming the moon thing is, which is unfortunate. Dragonlance had an alignment system that kind of is what I use still. A little more sophisticated, but the original system, every character started as neutral unless you were a paladin or something that had to be good or evil or whatever. But they started neutral, and then as the game progressed, the DM would slide you up and down the scale based on the things you were doing,
and that's how
eventually
you'd
settle into an alignment, and then once it kind of locked in place, then you would determine. If you're good or bad. I like that system. Unfortunately, the new Dragonlance that's coming out is built on the 5e shell, so alignment is basically is really nothing more than being hand waved. It's one of the reasons why, if you notice, and this is a mechanic, this is where nonsense interferes with mechanics. Detect good and evil doesn't detect good and evil anymore, which is good on one hand because that shit was game breaking because you could never hide. You always had to have some contrivance to hide the bad guy because every idiot player who had access to that spell would be like, I cast detect live and detect evil on everyone. Like, dude, just stop, please stop. Like the only person you're ruining it for is yourself.
Oh, I lost
So,
Merwin.
well, I'm not sure what happened there, everybody. I apologize. I see the stream is running. Hopefully everybody can hear me while we get this sorted out. You know what? I'm going to switch over to our break really quick, and I will have to sort this out. Hopefully you guys can hear me. I don't know if Doc can. Clearly he can't, but we'll figure that out in the meantime. So let's go ahead and hopefully this plays.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Spoils of War, brought to you by Dungeon Studios. I'm Sean Carroll, and this special item I have to show you is straight out of Indonesia, from the island of Bali. I present to you the Celtic Spirit Bull Skull. Now, the Celtic Spirit is just the design I chose for this skull in particular. You don't have to go with this design, nor a bull. It could be a ram. It could be a longhorn bull. It's really, really amazing. The site you would go to look for this on your own is skullbliss.com. You can look through all the different types of designs. There's so much variety for you to choose from. And if you give them your email, you get $100 off your first purchase. Now, if you don't like the horns and how they're etched in, you can get them without. You don't like the Celtic Spirit? You can get one of their many, many different designs that they have available for you. Also, these are hand designed. They might be mirroring, but each one, you could tell the craftsmanship is just beautiful and well done. This has been another episode of Spoils of War. If you like this episode, check us out on Facebook or dungeonstream.com. If you give us a like, follow, and share, it would really help us out. You can also check us out on Twitter and Instagram. This has been The Spoils of War. I'm Sean Carroll, and until next time.
The newest member of the Tinkerers Guild of Artificers, Pokas is an aspiring student who wished to experience the world and to work on his inventions. One of his best creations to date is his Eldritch Cannon Companion, created in the style of a Trojan horse. It may look small, but it packs a punch. Thank you very much for watching. If you like what you see, don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram at Nathan_Paul1998 and my Twitter at Nathan_J_Paul. See you next time for more character designs, redesigns, and commissions.
Doc, are you back with me? Can you hear me?
Hello. Yeah, I can hear you.
Wonderful.
Good to be back. Sorry about that, everybody.
So I should have realized I was tempting fate. I didn't say that this was the worst run podcast on the internet. And I tried to avoid the cruel hand of fate by not mentioning how smooth our opening went. Clearly, I was just setting myself up to get wrecked at the end of the break. This is the game presented to you by Dungeon Studios,
Welcome back.
A tabletop talk show. DMs chatting about all things gaming. We welcome you back. Thank you for being with us. Appreciate you sticking around through the break. So please remember to like, share, subscribe. Check us out on Patreon, Discord, and all the socials. Please support the show, the studio, and our upcoming Kickstarter, Enron Adventures Volume 2. So
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Absolutely. So, appreciate you guys sticking around through the break. Let me finish what I was saying. I was going to get into this idea I had a while ago about alignment, and then I realized something. Much like I have the spectrum of creatives versus consumers for players, I also realized that it's very hard for people who aren't trained as an actor or familiar with writing and creating to really play the game from the perspective of somebody who isn't them. Characters are often avatar-style characters where there's some piece or bit of your personality, right?
Right.
And from this, I realized that there's really no such thing as character alignment for most players. Only the high-level players really get into the alignment of the character. But what does exist is what I refer to as player alignment. And each person...
Yeah, tell us about this. I
yeah.
want to hear about this.
Okay.
I've been waiting.
Well, I've decided I've lined up. I have 3 that I'm going to share with you this evening.
Yeah,
So player alignment is essentially how I classify a player's personality and how it reflects on their character in the game. Now, you will notice, because I don't like anyone or anything, that most of these tend to be evil alignments. I haven't really found a good one yet. Someday I'll have a player who's a good player in my game.
I can think of one offhand. I won't say it right now. I won't.
Okay.
Think of one offhand. Well, I'll put it out there later.
Well, I'm going to put them out there.
Popular of them.
Well, here's what I have. This is not an all-encompassing list. I have a whole bunch of these, but I'm going to start with some of my favorite ones. 2 of them are more recent than others. So let's just start with the classic, the one that began it all, which defines one of the players in my original home game. His alignment is psychotic evil.
Yes.
That's his player alignment. Allow me to give you an explanation of what this alignment entails and see if it fits any of the players in your game. And if it does, so help you God, may he have mercy upon your soul. The psychotic evil player is one who uses the character to make decisions consistently that allow them to act out some level of unhealthy desires, urges, or sort through their own personal rage. The beauty of this is that it's not always that the person themselves is sick, although they certainly might be. But it is more it may also be a simple reflection that people are, that people project into the game what they think they should do. We've all, I don't know if you've ever had this conversation, Doc, and I've had a lot of real-world morality discussions to support these alignments. But have you ever had the conversation, what would you do if X, Y, Z? You have children, so, what would you do if somebody hurt your child?
Right. Absolute morality questions.
Right.
Absolutely.
And this is the thing. I think for the psychotic evil player, a lot of it isn't necessarily that they are Norman Bates, but it could be that they think that's how you're supposed to respond. Best example I can give you is the ideal of torture. So in my real life, I am a professional interviewer / interrogator. That's what I do. I talk to people for a living. And one of the things that you learn early on is that people will actually make false confessions to you for a variety of reasons. Some people are so stressed out by the conversation that they just want to be done talking to you, so they'll say whatever the hell you want.
That's
right?
true. Yeah. That is true.
Whatever you want. And then some people are so empathetic for others, or they think they know who did something wrong, and they don't want that person to suffer anymore because they feel bad for them. They will either take the blame or offer to fix a problem that they didn't cause just to protect somebody else. And where this comes up in relation to the alignment is the idea that, like torture, for example, well, if I torture them, they'll tell me what I want to know. And that's a very common misconception. The reality is, and this is backed up by a lot of facts that you can look at according to the internet, and the internet's never wrong. Torturing people will get them to give you an answer, absolutely, to make it stop. But there's no guarantee that answer is actually going to be a truthful answer. They'll just say whatever. Now, obviously, I'm sure people that do waterboarding and fun stuff like that have some way to source this shit out. But that's the reality of it. And so when I was younger as a gamer, I just assumed that this would always work. And then my friends got mad because anytime the bad guy didn't give up every secret the second that they were threatened with torture, then I was having unrealistic NPCs who are just trying to cheat the party out of getting their information. I'm like, I go, and I had this argument. I go that once you start putting the knives to them, they're going to tell you whatever you want to hear. It's not going to be the right information, but they will do it. Now, you wanted to talk in the second half about media and gaming. Can you give me what I think would be the most famous example of somebody lying under threat of torture? Most famous media example. I'll give you the line. Dantooine. They're on Dantooine.
Oh yeah, Princess Leia being tortured in the Death Star.
Yeah, she undergoes torture, doesn't give up anything, and then when they threaten her homeworld, she gives up the rebel. Well, she lies about it, but she gives up something.
Well, and you know what else though? I also realized something else about that scene.
What?
If you think about it, she definitely uses some kind of force power to overcome.
We're not going to talk about that madness you're about to say. You speak blasphemy, sir, from the sequels. Don't talk to me with that nonsense.
It's not blasphemy from the sequels. I mean, how has she survived that needle in that movie?
I'm going to shut you down because this will become a holy war if you keep talking.
And I'm going to give Fluke Skywalker here, and we're going to.
Well, look, here's the thing. Okay, Fluke Scott, really? Here, your topic coming up is media. RPGs and media. We can argue about this then. Let me finish my point about psychotic evil because I got two more to go.
Go ahead.
So the psychotic evil person does these things thinking that this is what you're supposed to do, or this is how you're supposed to respond to things, and it's not a response that makes sense for the character potentially. It doesn't make sense in context, and it's probably not what they would do in real life, but that's what they think they're supposed to do. This leads you to a psychotic evil player, and they make appropriate choices in their game. One of the famous ones, obviously, is always, it's what my character would do. I'll give you a quick example of this. In a campaign, the psychotic evil player is traveling with a quote-unquote beloved NPC, a harmless Kender, and as soon as they think there's going to be a trap that they can avoid, they grab the Kender, who is their guide and their friend, and holds him in front of them, so the Kender gets blown up by the trap and not them. And the best part about the alignments is they're incapable of realizing how crazy that is, and they get mad that you question their decision. Number two, this is one of my more recent ones, is virtuous evil. The virtuous evil player is the one who will do all the same horrible things the psychotic evil player will do, but will argue with you about how because it they can justify the action, then they're not doing evil. They're actually doing good.
Right.
Their
yes,
evil is virtuous.
Yes.
My
virtuous
example
evils.
my example of this, and I've had this argument in detail. It's probably a wonderful one to have, like again with Russell that comes back or any of the guests. But there was a horrible story where a drunk driver hits a guy's kids as they're walking home, and the father just his kids are done.
Right.
Just walks the block back to his house, loads his handgun, walks back, and shoots the guy like 9 times, because he's passed out at his steering wheel, right? Just kills him in cold blood. And I had the explanation. I go, look, man. I go, if I'm on that guy's jury, if I'm picked as a 12 to determine if that guy's guilty or innocent, I'm like, dude, I don't know. How do you know he shot the guy? I don't see premeditation anywhere. I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. He's definitely not guilty. But from a intellectually honest and morally morally validated stance, or a properly oriented moral stance,
Right.
that's an evil act. Killing the guy is not going to save your children. It doesn't bring back your children. It doesn't do anything. It's a pure act of rage and vengeance and grief. And again,
Virtuous evil is very popular too in the movies.
And I wouldn't send the guy to jail if I'm on his jury. But if you want to ask me, did he do something wrong? Did he do an evil thing? 100%, I would say he did. And again, maybe he doesn't get into the pearly gates, but I'm not throwing him into hell. But the virtuous evil player is a person that will find a context in which whatever horrible thing they want to do is somehow okay. Torture's okay.
Almost anything can be okay.
Bringing about the death of another character or NPC is perfectly fine if it serves their goal.
Stealing from a church can be perfectly fine because this church doesn't need it or whatever.
Yep. And I think the most insidious element of the virtuous evil player alignment is that player will inevitably try to control the actions of other characters by claiming that their character wouldn't tolerate whatever behavior.
Action. Yeah. Someone else.
So they must comply with what I say is good because I am clearly the moral authority. And then my most recent addition, and one that I direct squarely at least one cast member of Critical Role in their current campaign's character, who I can't stand, is the ideal of random stupid. Now,
I was going to say chaotic stupid.
Well,
I use chaotic stupid for random.
You could use chaotic stupid as well. Chaotic stupid would be a cousin of random stupid, in which they do things that are just mind-numbingly, game-destroyingly, verisimilitude-wrecking, immersion-breaking, dumb, and they do it intentionally in opposition of what the right thing to do is.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that to me. That I use that chaotic.
Yeah, this is the example of that I would give is from Critical Role, where early on low-level characters encounter a big giant Loxodon elephant person priest, and the one player is like, "I'm gonna pickpocket them." Okay, so let's just game this out. If you fail this roll in a city with law and order, with your first level party friends hanging around you, on somebody who looks like they're prominent, and he catches you trying to steal from him, what do we think the outcome is going to be? Is that, I mean, and now, in fairness...
Now, I can tell you something, though. Playing a chaotic, stupid character can be very fun. And again, I go right back to talk to your DM, because when I came back to D&D, I talked to my DM, and I got to play a chaotic, stupid character, and all the players I was playing with knew it, and we all had a great time with it. It could be a lot of fun.
No, and here's the thing. I have rules for this that I've put into place in my games. That if you're playing that kind of, if you're going to do that, what you need to do is it needs to be a player-to-player explanation. Hey, look, guys, really quick. I think my character would do this. Here's why. I know it might cause problems, but I think it makes sense. If you want to tell me I'm wrong, let's talk about it really quick. I have the same kind of rule for PvP, where you can be, hey, look, I get that this might be a problem. I'm not mad at you as a player. I'm not trying to go player versus player. I think my character would have a problem with yours.
Right.
I get it. But chaotic stupid would be somebody doing it in opposition of what the right thing to do is. Random stupid is where they just blunder around and do whatever whim strikes them. It's not in
any
opposition
order.
to anything.
It's nothing.
Yeah, it's not to oppose anything. It's not to accomplish anything. It's just whatever random thing hits them. And I find,
it's like too stupid.
Yeah, and I find this goes along with the death of the hero narrative. From what I see, a lot of modern gamer sensibilities is that the party is not burgeoning heroes or the people chosen by destiny or even reluctant heroes or anti-heroes. They're just a gaggle of freaks who are just randoming around doing whatever they feel like when they feel like it, and nothing is relevant to them. There's no they're acting as if they are not part of a world where there's consequences to their actions.
Right.
I think that I mean, let's be honest. The evil alignments, those can be managed, and if your players are receptive, you talk with the DM and the other players, you can build a lot of good stories on some of that stuff.
It's true, though, what you said. These are all player aligned.
Oh, 100%.
I like that.
Yeah, 100%.
Like
I have lots more of these. I'll queue them up for further segments.
Wait. Can I ask you this question? Because I thought of one myself. Do you have a lawful rules as written player?
Um.
I think of it quickly, real quick. The lawful rules as written player. They play any type of lawful alignment. It doesn't matter what they're playing. They just stop the game because we've got to get to the rules as written. It doesn't matter. We've got to follow the rules as written. Sorry.
I will officially name that lawful disruptive.
All right, that's good. I like that.
I'm going to make a note of that.
Okay.
Someday when I don't suck at life, I'm going to turn these into a YouTube series. Maybe I can pitch the idea to our wonderful producer Josh, and we can make a bunch of YouTube shorts
on player
based on player alignments. Lawful disruptive. I like that. I'm going to make a note of that. That's my first, not necessarily evil one that I have.
Could also be lawful dissident. Might be good too.
Could be. Lawful disrupt. Yeah, it could be. I will say this though, just in fairness to the player alignments, like as I was saying, and even random, and even chaotic stupid. I could probably tolerate. The other part of the stupid with that is the player seems to be just completely ignorant to the impact of what they're doing. That's the stupid part. But you can work with all of these, and I'm a firm believer in this. There's no winning or losing at D&D. That's a topic for another conversation too. Stop trying to win at D&D. We got to talk about that one. But there's no winning or losing. There's just different directions the story goes, and sometimes you want them to go that way, and sometimes you don't want them to go that way. Character death is a great example of when you don't want the story to go that way, but it does. So a random stupid person, or any of the evils can build that. They can build waffle disruptive. That's hilarious. Waffle disruptive. That's great.
Waffle disruptive.
Apparently, I don't enunciate my L's probably. Lawful.
Lawful disruptive.
Yeah. Lawful disruptive. Let's see if it comes up in the in the chats. Yeah, L's. Yep. Okay. So I'm a mush mouth apparently. Thank you for pointing that out in the chat. But you can work these things into the game.
Waffle disruptive is an own line.
No. Hang on. And Owen, welcome to the show, buddy. Always happy to have you around to listen. No, I'm gonna put it in the lexicon right now. Waffle disruptive. Hold on, I'm adding it right now. Waffle disruptive is the player type that disrupts the flow of the game because they can't make a decision and they keep reversing what they want to do.
Yep,
they waffle back and forth.
Yep, that's exactly it. The waffler.
Thank you to the chat for adding to my alignment system. Producer Josh in Dungeon Studios, please assist me with building my my web show on YouTube. We're going to be rich. So thank you for listening to that. We're getting late in the evening, so I'm going to save the ghost story for next week when we talk to Hell's Historian, and I can give a proper spookiness to it. It's a good one. It actually happened in the winter in a snowstorm, and it ties into one of my.
We'll still be getting colder out too.
Yeah, and it ties into one of my earlier ghost stories as well. So let's move right on to shameless plug number 3. Please buy our stuff. We're poor. Thank you very much. I'm kidding. We already did it.
Or even come get our free stuff at our website.
Oh yeah, Enron Chronicle you can download for free off our website.
Bang. And then you can check out our stuff, and then you can decide how much further down the rabbit hole you're ready.
And Doc, do you know what else is free to do at Dungeon Studios?
What else is free to do at Dungeon?
To sign up to be a playtester.
Oh, absolutely is free to be a playtester and just, be a cool social person about D&D.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I said, get with us and have a good time. So from what I understand, and we're working through this for the current batch. Sometimes the author of the module will be the DM. That's what we usually do first. That's what I think has been happening. And then other times you get some of our stable of DMs who aren't the writers to run the adventures, but you can often get in and actually have direct contact with the person writing it, and really have that frontline impact, especially if you do something cool. This came up in our playtest of the General's Lost Galley. I don't want to spoil the big bad end game monster, but I did not have rules in place for what to do when you're inside the belly of the beast. And one of our players had shapeshifted into a water elemental and said, "Hey, can I sneak inside the monster's body? I'm water." I'm like, "That's
this is great,
brilliant."
Great. Yeah,
yes, you can. And they were inside the creature's stomach, healing party members who would have died. And I can tell you right now, at the end of the day, their damage output was not what some people would want to see, but that player single-handedly kept that from being a party wipe, and really is the reason they won that encounter.
And that player also was a newbie, right? That was a newbie too, like really creative, super thinking player, and was a team player. Was in there for everybody. It was great.
Yep. So in light of that, before we go on to media, RPGs and media, a good day one DM tip throughout there as well. You never want to squash creative players who are thinking. Sometimes the stuff's off the wall, and sometimes it doesn't line up with what you want. Sometimes it can be disruptive, and sometimes there aren't rules for what they want to do. But I'm going to tell you right now, what you need to do is you need to harness that, and you need to guide that into good gameplay and being a good player and having a good character. You need to guide that. Don't squash that, because I can tell you right now, one of the most heartbreaking things that ever happened to me, in college, I took a writing class. I turned in a bit of creative writing that probably wasn't that good, let's be honest. And the professor, who hated fantasy and hated sci-fi, skunked me on my grade and just shit all over everything I had done. And nothing constructive out of it. He just basically is like, "You suck, don't write this, it's garbage," right?
Right.
Meanwhile, a very risque piece by another person in class about some self-fulfillment, we'll say, was lauded in front of the class about how bold and brave and refreshing.
Oh, Jesus.
Like she wrote the script to a porno. Can we calm down?
Oh, my gosh.
But that ruined me, right? It just wrecked me. I didn't write for years after that. I was destroyed by that. It really got to me. And you might have a person at your table that has the most outlandish stuff. You swat them down for that, and they quit your game. They never speak up again. It totally ruins them. You want to encourage that. You want to grow that player.
Yeah, that's a whole creativity, and how to grow that is a whole nother show for us. Right. Absolutely.
So let's close this night out with RPGs in media, and you explaining and you telling everybody why you're wrong about the sequel movies in Star Wars being any good. Clearly they're garbage. You don't know that.
I never said that. I don't know where you're going with that I said that. You're just crazy.
All right, what do you got?
No, this is interesting. I wasn't sure how to. Well, let me say where this whole impetus, where this came from. I don't watch TV on regular schedule, so on Netflix I was catching up with The Flash.
Okay.
And The Flash itself, talking about a geek revival. That show has thrown every geek reference in I can freaking imagine. They even did a joke about Janeway in an episode in the last season that I saw. But they had a really cool Dungeons and Dragons keeps hitting really hard. Actually, if they say level up one more time, I'm going to puke my ass off. How many times they have said level up in Flash.
That touches a lot of genres, though. That touches video gaming, RPGs.
Right. I mean, and they're definitely hitting D&D really hard with the level up, because it means powers are increasing, and a few characters have been mentioning it. So that's what brought me to say, hey, let's talk about this topic tonight. And I realized, we're seeing it more and more and more and more and everywhere. And I wanted to hear some, before I even give any, some examples that that are some of your favorites. You already threw some out there before.
Yeah. All right. So do we want to get away from the obvious ones like Stranger Things?
No, I know. Any ones you want to talk about? Stranger Things. Okay, huge one, big one. We can talk about that one till the end of time.
No. I want to hit some smaller ones. So
right, that one's a huge one. So keep going.
I am a gigantic fan of when they slip that shit in to different stuff because I love that idea of that you get the inside joke.
Right.
So I'll give you a good example. One of the players from Critical Role, Ashley Johnson. Missed the whole middle part of the very first campaign, or was playing remotely because they're all actors, they're voice actors, but she's an actress as well. Right. She was in the Avengers movie, and was apparently going to be a love interest for Captain America at one point, but they scrapped that. She's the waitress girl that he saves from the Chitauri.
Right.
But she got a role on a TV show called The Blind Spot, a procedural drama where a girl gets discovered in a duffel bag covered in tattoos they have to decipher over the seasons. And the writers were clever enough to work in a reference, and one of the characters comes down, and Ashley Johnson's like the nerdy science chick, the CSI chick, and one of the detectives comes down and asks her something about being in a character, and then she smartly replies, she goes, "Nope, actually I play a gnome cleric," which, for those of you that are fans of Critical Role, her character in campaign 1 of Critical Role is Pike Trickfoot, a gnome cleric. So the writers actually threw that in there. They didn't say it was D&D. They didn't make any allusion to the show. They just had that little drop of dialogue. And it's one of those things where it's, if you watch that show, it's a neat little, you're like, I saw what you did there. I got it. I found it.
Now that's going to be interesting because that's another whole thing. So what are some other big ones? I know for me, I'm a big Marvel comic reader, and they appear in Guardians of the Galaxy. And what's really cool is Rocket, the raccoon, is the DM, which I think is really cool. And he's trying to convince everyone to play.
Yeah, don't spoil how it happens, because I haven't watched the holiday special yet, so don't spoil it.
Oh, no. This is in the comic book.
Oh, the comics. Oh, okay. I thought it was in the holiday special.
No. This is in the comic book, and this was a few years ago that it turned up. And you mentioned Community, which was, that was like a huge.
I think that might be that outside of Stranger Things. That might be the best D&D tie-in in a show ever. There's 2 episodes of it, by the way. Have you seen both episodes?
Yes. Oh. Now, it's interesting. They're not in the top 10 out there on the internet. They're not in the top 10.
Oh, God, they're amazing.
Now, let me give you this one that they have. I'll give you the quick top 10, because, again, we could be talking about this forever. And I still have a very interesting thing I want to talk to you about, this media thing with Dungeons and Dragons. It was in E.T.
All right, you know what? Here's it. I want you to give me the source, and I'll see if I can if I remember what it was.
In E.T.
Okay.
Elliot's old. You're okay.
I'm trying to think of where it was in E.T. Okay, go. I don't know this one. Give it to me.
So Elliot's older brother, Mike, is playing it with his teenage pals.
Okay.
And he says, "How do you win at this game anyway?" Their mom asks. And he says, "There is no winning. It's like life. You don't win at life," says the game master, Steve. And then he says, "So true."
Okay.
They actually say that in E.T. And that's interesting later, the time period that was made. We'll talk about that. The Simpsons, it comes up when Homer goes to college.
Yep, I remember that. Yep. He joins the nerd fraternity, and they help him out, and they play D&D.
All right. Freaks and Geeks.
That show is all about D&D. That's kind of like the intellectual precursor to Stranger Things.
And that's what I was going to say. That one is credited as one of the really, really huge ones to bringing it to media before Stranger Things. If you're going to put that one in there. It does appear in the final episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Really?
Yes. They're talking about a climactic battle strategy that they actually played in Dungeons and Dragons.
I did not know that. That's
Yes.
awesome. Okay.
So that's kind of a cool one.
I always think real quick. I always think of I know it's. I don't think it's accurate, but I always feel like the final episode of Buffy was
Right.
the one where she ends up in the insane asylum, and then you're left not knowing if
Oh, right.
Buffy's
If it's-
world is real or if she's crazy.
Right.
Like I always feel like that would be the series for this show's finale, but I clearly am wrong. All right,
Well,
go ahead.
So long ago, it could be in your mind, right?
Yeah.
Now, this one I never knew about. I got to catch up with this. Did you know that they made a 2008 Futurama movie?
Is that
Okay.
well? No, yeah, yeah. I think that's the one with the Sprungers and the
I
Golden
don't.
Death
I
Stars.
don't. I really
think?
don't know anything about it. It
Okay.
says there are 5 episodes squished together.
Yeah.
One is a D&D tribute, which is actually.
Oh yes, yes. No, okay. I 100% remember this now. Yes,
Okay.
they it's fucking great.
And it's a huge tribute to Gary Gygax.
Yeah.
It also was produced the week he died, or
Yeah,
something.
they have
like,
Gary. So Gary Gygax is one of the heads in the jars,
Okay.
and I believe it's like they play on like a crazy virtual tabletop.
It says primarily set in a
think so.
D&D created fantasy world of Cornwood in a now criminally insane Bender's mind. It features wizards, rampaging orcs, and Leela as a centaur, while also making sure to include some actual dragons in an actual dungeon.
Yep. Okay. I know. You know what? I'm gonna watch that now because I remember it. I knew
Yeah,
that
yeah.
happened. I knew it happened. The Sprunger thing that's like their Star Wars
Oh, okay.
crossover thing. Okay. Awesome. Keep going.
A 70s show, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And I've never seen that.
All right.
Now, Stranger Things goes in there at number 9.
Yep.
Now, one of the big ones, which I knew it and I didn't think about it. I saw it with my daughter, My Little Pony.
They
Which, of
they have a
course-
whole crossover line of toys for that.
Right. They already have a whole crossover line of toys. So that's definitely the top 10 of the media crossovers. Now,
There's
before-
so many more than that. Though.
No, that's what I'm going to say. Before we go into the super list, I want to talk. Have you ever heard of Lipschitz? I say Lipschitz.
I know the phrase.
All right. Well, we're going to look at popular culture through the eyes of George Lipschitz. And when we look at Dungeons and Dragons and popular culture through the eyes of George Lipschitz, what we're looking at is exactly what we talk about with this woke culture. And let's back up now and see how much different things were and the way people perceive things then.
All right.
So we go back to 1970s and 1980s, really the first, emergence of Dungeons and Dragons in the media, I hate to say it, is the Tom Hanks movie.
Oh, Maces and Monsters.
Right. And the interesting thing in the early 80s, and this we were talking about E.T., where they make a positive comment about the game being like life and it can go any way. The TV media was portraying it as evil and in the satanic panic.
It's actually that movie is the reason why I wasn't allowed to get books.
Right.
And and engage in the game because my mother assumed that I was going to end up insane at the World Trade Center trying to cross over into the portal after having murdered a hobo. So
Right. And there was also a lot of I guess Lorraine Williams, who's still running TSR, who's still having a lot of battles with Gary Gygax
okay.
in that same time period. So, merchandising and all that, putting the show out and getting stuff out to players was sort of something that wasn't considered something they were even, worried about. So, due to the suspicion in culture, it really got a very, very back seat. Now, what's interesting, they go into looking at it again. George Lipschitz, culture starts changing in the 90s and the 2000s, right? And they consider this the second period. And they're talking about the Cold War generation, starting to wake up. And we're more morally ambivalent about Dungeons and Dragons, but it's still appears as sort of a negative thing. It's still kind of talked about as Satan's game. They talk about this one term where it comes up where they talk about eating Cheetos, how it's D&D is more like a social dysfunction.
I cast
Okay.
magic missile.
Right,
Cast magic
right,
missile at-
right.
That's
right.
the darkness.
Right, you're a geek if you play Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing. It appears in the comic strip Foxtrot in the 90s,
Yeah.
sort of the same way as a geeky kind of a thing. In the 90s sitcom Jessie, she gets trapped with a boy she's dating at his D&D table. So
Okay.
it's sort of still, from the George Lipschitz era, it's still sort of negative. Now they do talk about it coming up in Dexter's Lab as the first time players are improvising and creating. And that's the late 90s. And they're talking about this being a major shift for Lipschitz. And the whole thing, they talk about Dark Tower coming out, flash animation on the web, and how technology sort of, motivates everything to move forward, right?
Right.
Then they talk about how terms get in the early 90s, like rules lawyer.
Yeah, they
And
work their way
those-
into the lexicon.
Right, make their way into the lexicon. And then, of course, this is when Freaks and Geeks comes out and really exemplifies the show, explodes it. And then the whole thing really, and this is where YouTube goes in, and I was wondering, this is where you started talking about Critical Role
Yep.
and their little sneaky things. They talk about, and I didn't know about this, did you ever hear of Dungeon Mastery? A public access television show in 2004. Yes.
No.
Okay. It's unlike anything. It was a public access television show. 5 artists produced a living show in Los Angeles. This would be the pre-runner to Critical Role.
Huh.
Okay.
I was not familiar with that.
Behind the players are costumed in their characters. They act out actions, meticulously crafted backdrops. They would also use stop frame animations. They would also pit animated miniature figures against handcrafted plasticine monsters. So
Yeah.
imagine like little Monty Python skits.
Oh, it's
Now,
hilarious.
I've never seen any of this, and there's YouTube clips here on
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
scene.
I will check that out.
Yes, so it's called Dungeon Mastery.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you right now. So the I see the progression of this stuff, and it's the same path that science fiction had in the 50s and 60s, in the 40s,
Right,
50s, and
right.
60s, and then its impact in culture. We talked about this before.
Right,
You know,
right.
there's probably 24 things from Star Trek, Buck Rogers, hell, even Flash Gordon, that made their way into the modern world. Either things they were predicting were going to happen, variations of it.
Buck Rogers, stop.
What?
Buck Rogers, stop. You know Displacer Beast is from a planet that Buck Rogers visits?
Really?
Yeah, it was actually stolen from a science fiction novel. I forgot. I'll get the reference for us next week. Shit, I forgot.
Okay.
But definitely, that was a ripoff of them. We talk
Nice.
about
I
ripoffs
did not know
everywhere.
that.
Yes. And then
Yeah.
they claimed it as Displacer Beast,
Yeah.
but it was actually a creature that Buck Rogers fought.
Oh, nice. But yeah,
anyway.
it's one of those things. So you saw that the science fiction that people consumed in those decades became the technology people were striving to create in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And that's how
Right.
the next generation carried that legacy on.
We have our tricorders now. We all have our tricorders.
Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah, absolutely. And
Now.
and then for D&D now, this is the thing. So in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, the big culture was all this nerd stuff, Dungeons and Dragons. Your fantasy stuff came back into really back in big, and those people that has influenced generations of people. It's why you can see a lot of, like I said, little references, but also you can see concepts make their way into stuff.
Now,
Led
hang on.
Zeppelin.
Let's get back to Lipschitz.
Okay.
Because now the next shift is funny because you brought up community. And the next is called the scaling up period is 2008 to 2012. Now, I was not playing in that time period, so I don't know. Maybe you can talk about the game in that period, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the community appearance.
Yeah.
That's frequent Big Bang showing up. Penny Arcade.
Yep.
You're familiar with that?
Yep.
Acquisition Incorporated.
Yep.
All
They
these
do
things.
Yep.
All right. The Escapist.
Heard that
things,
one, but I don't know it.
All right. All these things are like hitting big time.
Oh yeah.
And then again, the next period convergence is 2012 to 2013. And really what they talk about is that's the dawn of the expo.
Okay.
They talk about conventions and expos taking off. Now,
I went to Gen Con in 93 and 95. It was pretty massive back then, but
no, but when did Critical Role do their whole show
Critical
up at the
Role
convention?
started in 2017.
All right. So I guess what they're talking about here is that in 2012 and 2013, that pretty much the overlay for role-playing games ends up at every convention. Twitch is on.
Yep.
And all this stuff just becomes normalcy.
Yeah.
There's
Well, that was
YouTube channels. There's
Twitch turned successfully for some areas and unsuccessfully for others. Twitch turned gaming into entertainment.
right
Something
and
that we
that's what they
hadn't
talk
had
about.
before. And
Right.
it was it was a lot of video game stuff to start, but you had just to so we're talking about Critical Role. Felicia Day had a YouTube series called The Guild, which was
Right.
poking fun of Momo nerds
Right.
and World of Warcraft, which was also obviously rising in this time period as well. But then you had that explosion on Twitch of the gaming, and she had her channel on there. Is their channel in their Geek and Sundry had geek content. It's what they had,
Right.
and it was, it was where they were looking to fill a slot. The Guild had done well, and then people were watching, Geek and Sundry stuff. And she reached out to Mercer and is like, hey, we got a slot to fill. Do you guys want to play D&D on here? And they actually were thinking that it was gonna, they weren't gonna do it at first, and then decided, they're like, well, okay, we will, but no one's gonna watch people play D&D online.
Right,
No one's gonna,
right.
and it has radically shifted. Shifted the foundations of the whole industry. So
Now we go to the other spectrum.
Okay.
And you talk about medium. It's showing up in everywhere. There's a book of Dyson Men.
Mm-hmm.
You have Fantasy Freaks and Gaming Geeks. All different books about memoirs of role players popping up here and there. Comics. Again, we talked about Penny Arcade. I talked about it, crossing into Marvel. You get into film. We already talked about E.T. The one I found really interesting is Disney's latest Onward.
Yep.
Did you know they actually got away with Gelatinous Cube?
Oh, dude, no. I went and saw that in the theater. It's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah. I'm just wondering how they got away with Gelatinous Cube and Beholder, or how much money changed hands.
Oh,
to
well,
use
yeah.
use
Well,
those
no, it's things.
characters.
There's a lot of stuff in there that I think they probably had to pay for. But you know what? That movie was great.
Oh no, I loved it. I totally loved it. Absolutely. Now, some we missed ended up in Sarah Silverman. She plans a date night playing D&D.
You missed another one of my favorites.
Go ahead.
Was Kay and Peele. You familiar with them?
No, no,
All right.
no.
They're kind of the successors to Dave Chappelle.
Okay,
And
okay.
one of their skits is they're playing D&D, and they're playing D&D, and the guy's cousin joins the game.
Okay.
He's like, "What'd you be?" He goes, "Yo, I'm a giant, yo. My name's Kanye." Like that, you can't be that. Like, no, let him play, Yeah, I'm gonna smack these bitches. Dude, it's fucking hilarious. I can't do it justice.
You know what was great in the Flash episode? They had the one character who didn't want to play D&D in the first half, and then in the second, like at the teaser at the end, he comes out and he's got his Marlin robe on. He comes out, and he even does the "Thou shall not pass" line. Yep. So it's like great to have the Lord of the Rings tossed in there.
Yeah, I'll tell you now. So I think if I can interject on the stream here, I think the big turning point that we're all missing in this conversation, and it cannot be overlooked, is the impact of the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings movies.
Oh yeah,
because I remember going to Star Wars and going to Conan and those kind of films, if they even reached the theater. And you, like I said, you knew who was going to be there. You knew who the crew was going to be. That's what you saw. You expected it, and you knew it was coming, right? When I went to see Lord of the Rings, there were people in that, and I saw it multiple times in the theaters. There were people in those movies that I would not have guessed in a million years were going to go and enjoy that kind of media. And I think that really was a turning point because it was so good and so
I don't
well
know.
received.
I don't know. There was a period though too that like I don't know. You were young. Excalibur, the original Excalibur.
Of course I know Excalibur. Thank you very much.
You're a baby, but going to see that in the movie theater when no one cared, was awesome.
Well, yeah, no, don't get me wrong. It's nice to have that feeling as well, that you're into the thing and nobody else knows about it. That's great.
Oh, yeah, that was great.
But I don't think you can overstate the impact of those three movies on shifting fantasy in particular into mainstream. And then I think you could say the same thing about the Matrix movies.
And I'll give you this too. You know what's really cool?
What?
I saw those two. I saw Excalibur in the same movie theater with the same friends that I saw the first Lord of the Rings years later. Yeah, it's like the fantasy crew. We all got back together.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, I remember going to the Conan remake, going to Kull the Conqueror, which is a hilariously it's such a bad movie that's so good.
Well, it's funny. Somebody had that on Facebook this week. They just had the weapon, and everyone was commenting. They saw the blade spinning, and everyone knew exactly what that thing was. You know. Yeah. And you talk about that D&D media crossover. Like I said, that's how my brother got into the game. He read Lord of the Rings, and somehow, Guy Gax got that page in the back. That was probably the other dude from TSR probably got the page in the back. Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to find out. That one.
She is great. But I'll tell you what, though. Like I said, I mentioned it earlier. I really think the big ticket we want to get, that we're looking for, is when technology can merge with the game seamlessly. And I don't mean playing online. That will get, virtual reality will be the ultimate thing. But I really think the sweet spot between what we know and love as the game currently and what the game can be is going to be when you get some sort of seamless augmented reality setup, so that you're not looking through your phone. You don't have to have anything special.
Game at that point too. But let me continue.
Slide on the glasses. Okay.
All right. So now going into some of these next ones I talk about going into different medias, I feel like especially looking at Wikipedia, because I look at lots of sources and I'm looking at Wikipedia last. I'm almost like we should put ourselves on here, because in podcasts, there's only 2 podcasts here. There's Dungeons and Daddies.
Yeah.
And there's My Brother and Me, The Adventure Zone.
Yeah.
Heck, man, let's put ourselves here, right? Can't we put ourselves on
Absolutely.
this?
Well, here's the thing. So this is when we were kicking this idea around, right? I realized something. I drive a shit ton for work. A ton of driving, right?
Right.
And every time when I go looking for it, I found one of two things. I found gameplay podcasts, like Adventure Zone is one of those where they're actually playing the game. Critical Role and whatnot. And unfortunately, and people, when I tell people this, they're like, really, you think that? Listening to people play Dungeons and Dragons is like watching paint dry. It's awful, right? Unless the people doing it are working towards providing an entertaining product.
Correct.
So Critical Role obviously does, it's made with an eye to that. But there are episodes of that show where I'm like, I just would rather drive my car off a cliff and listen to them go shopping again.
And I agree with you. I think that's how I feel about it.
Yeah.
When it's rolling, my problem is when it's rolling along, I feel like it's scripted.
Yeah. Yep.
And when
100%.
it isn't rolling wrong, I'm bored to death. So,
or you have the Wheel of Fortune syndrome. That's what's currently getting one of the many reasons I'm not as on top of Critical Role season 3 as the other two campaigns, is that it's gotten to that point where I'm like, okay, I don't think they react to moments that don't deserve the outsized reaction. And it just screams to me of not necessarily scripted, but like Wheel of Fortune. You need to jump up and down and act like a moron every time something happens, Family Feud or Wheel of Fortune, because that's how we want everyone to know you're excited. And that's how you get people acting like a bunch of idiots. And that's a big turnoff for me. And in Critical Role, not that they may not be excited about what's going on and all this kind of stuff. But it's just like, it just rings false to me, and it kind of loses some of the luster because of that. But the second thing I found was these very scripted, top 10 lists or tips for you today, where you don't get the benefit of a podcast where you have a long form conversation, people can get into topics, and you feel like you're hanging out at the table listening to people talk about the shit you want to talk about. And that's one of the things that I really push for to do with the podcast, and this, and that I've tried to start before, and then this show, is that it has to just be that. It has to be a conversation. I don't want to sit down and go through 5 news stories, a top 10 list, and say, okay, bye, everybody, because I don't want to listen to that. I want to listen to the kind of stuff that we do.
I want to finish my list here. Let me get.
All right,
going.
Well, it's almost 1 a.m. in Eastern
That's
time.
what I'm saying. Let me get going here.
Bring it home, buddy. Go.
Now we got music. All right. Now the one music song that always stands out, but they say Dungeons and Dragons, but they're not referring to Dungeons and Dragons, is the Tribe Called Quest song. I don't know if you're familiar with that song at all.
I'm not.
It's called the Dungeons and Dragons. It's like a rap song. They mention Dungeons and Dragons. It's more of a drug reference and a gang reference thing going on in there. Stephen Lynch, Weezer song, mentions the Dungeon Master's Guide and a 12-sided die. Did you know that? A Weezer song? See, I didn't know that. Chemical Romance.
Yeah, I like Weezer. I don't know. I don't know the Chemical Romance one off the top of my head, but
I'm Not Okay. They make reference to D&D in the intro.
Okay.
So just kind of, I didn't know there were even these musical references out there.
Well, and then of course the best one that we know of is Splintered Reality, friends of the show.
That's right, friends of the show. And that's what I'm saying. They should be here too. We need to add them to this list, right?
Yeah.
Now, that brings me to the end of the list, is they talk about notable players.
Okay.
Who do you think is the number one notable player?
Most notable? Well, okay.
Number one notable player.
Hold on. Is this just celebrities?
I guess so. And that's part of my problem with this too, is it looks like it's just, it's not just, I guess so.
All right. Well, because I'm going to drop some nerd on you right now. You're not going to believe. I guarantee you I can hit that whole list right now. So assuming
there's a ton here.
Assuming we're not talking about Matt Mercer, Critical Role people. Assuming that's out of the way.
Correct.
Actors. So the top 2 ones that I can throw out to you right now are Vin Diesel and Vin Diesel and Joe Manganiello are the 2 big ones. Joe Manganiello was actually a huge Dragonlance fan. He was on Critical Role, but also has been a huge force in pushing forward a lot of the D&D products into this kind of medium. So there's those 2 guys. I think those would be 2 top ones on your list. Then if we're going,
go ahead.
and then if
Keep
we're going,
going.
then if we're going to go down, obviously you have some of your, I don't want to be rude and say B tier people, but Deborah Ann Wool, who was on The Punisher, ran a D&D show online for Geek and Sundry called Relics and Rarities, a very interesting show to listen to. Obviously, Fahuzi Whatsits, I just said her name like 47,000 times. The redhead chick, whose name I can't think of, that runs Geek and Sundry. I'll think of it in a second.
Right. I know you're talking about. Yeah. We were talking about before.
Like she should be on there. And then Joe Manganiello actually has a home game that features amongst many luminaries, Tom Morello, the guitarist from Rage Against the Machine, The Big Show from WWE fame.
Oh wow, Morello is not. I don't see. Oh yeah, Tom Morello is.
Yep,
on
Tom
this
Morello.
list.
Okay.
Tom Morello is on this.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So the funny one is the number one slot they have here is Steve Colbert.
I was just gonna say that because here's why he's number one. He's done it 3 years in a row now on Red Nose Day. He does a one-on-one D&D game with Matt Mercer.
Right.
For charity. He's been doing those the last 3 years.
And he's had a few of those off-the-cuff D&D
references.
He'll say to somebody, roll initiative or something, and you got to kind of catch it when he was on his show.
Okay.
There were a few of those here. There were roll a save, and you didn't know what he was talking about.
Yep.
And then, of course, they have Vin Diesel up here in the top.
Yep. His actual, for those who don't know, and it's not a terrible movie. Vin Diesel's D&D character is the main character of a movie he got made, The Witch Hunter. I can't remember the name of the character, but that's his D&D character.
He wrote a book. It says in his book, 30 Years of Adventure, he was attracted to the artistic outlet the game provided.
Okay.
I didn't know, and that's intriguing media.
Somebody ghost wrote that shit. Shut up. Stop it, Vin Diesel. You ain't writing no book.
You never know. All right.
Stop it.
So anyway, they have Mike Myers up there, and
really,
Robin Williams was a D&D player.
You know what's funny? So I knew about that because he also I think played Warhammer. Which Henry Cavill, Henry Cavill's a Warhammer guy. I don't know if he's an RPG guy, but I read a story about Robin Williams going into the local game store, and coming across, and I think it was to buy Warhammer stuff, and coming across a kid and his mom. They were in the shop, and they, he was talking to them. They didn't realize who he was, and then he ended up hooking up this kid with like thousands of dollars in Warhammer stuff that he could never have afforded. Because that's the kind of guy that he was. So I'd heard that reference before. I didn't realize it was. I think I knew that was a D&D connection. I might have got that if you gave me enough time.
All right. And then of course we got Jon Favreau. I think, did you mention him?
Jon Favreau?
Yeah. The only thing is, I wish he played more D&D before he wrote Boba Fett. But anyway, let's keep going there.
Okay.
Now the other thing, the list. I think. The one thing that kind of bothers me about this, it says list of notable D&D players.
Okay.
The thing that really bothers me is most of them are actors.
Yeah.
Which kind of makes sense when we talked about being able to play someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You were talking about that, and I was going to bring that up later, and that's what I mean. Actors seem to be really good at D&D players because they can separate themselves from themselves.
Yeah, they have that skill set.
And I'm even wondering if that's something we want to talk about. Some of the techniques actors use, relaxation techniques and stuff that players could use to separate themselves to be better players.
Well, I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to put that in the bank because Russell, our KDM, is a classically trained actor and movie person. That's the wrong term. Director. That's his background. And I'm certain that he would have a lot of good insight into that.
Now, I'm going to say this too. A lot of these things, if you're out there and you hear us mention your name and you want to come visit us or talk to us about D&D on the game, please feel free to do so. Now, lots of actors, but I want to hit some of them. I'm not going to hit all of them. Some I recognize. Some Drew Barrymore, which is, of course, we just talked about E.T., right? We were mentioning that. Lots of authors on this list, too, that I'm not familiar with. Kevin Anderson,
Did Satine Phoenix make the list?
Satine Phoenix. I do not see that. No.
Okay.
No, I do not see that.
Well, she starred in some movies, but not many people would have seen them unless you're an adult male or
All right, and
teenage
then
male.
they have River Cuomo from Weezer on here.
Yeah.
They have we talked about Vin Diesel already. Now, Tim Duncan from the NBA. Did you know that?
Really?
Yes.
Tim Duncan is a super smart dude, so
Okay.
it doesn't surprise me.
All right. So that's why I found some cool ones here. Big Show. Do you know who Big Show is?
Yeah, that's the Big Show. That's the guy from WWE that plays in Joe Manganiello's game.
All right.
He's
so
a
you're familiar.
7 foot tall, 500-pound monstrosity of a human being.
All right. And then, of course, creator of Life in Hell and creator of The Simpsons.
Matt Groening.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we were talking about Guardians of the Galaxy earlier. James Gunn, of course, another D&D player crossing over there. And, of course, Stephen King.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right? Marilyn Manson,
Yeah.
Joe Manganiello.
Yep. That's what. Yep. That's
Right? We were talking about him
Yeah.
earlier is on the list. And, again, I like to see Moby and Tom Morello right alphabetically
Yeah.
on the list. And guess who's right after them?
I don't know. Hit me up.
Elon Musk was a D&D player.
Okay.
So
I can see
Elon,
that.
you want to come talk to us about the game? Come on, hang out with us, man. I got my own
Wouldn't
electric
that
car,
be
buddy.
nice?
I got my own electric car. We can debate electric cars, man. All right. Anyway, Mike Myers,
Yep.
we talked about also before. And see if there's any here that really stick out. Spielberg played, which
Yep.
is kind of makes sense. Vince Vaughn. And again, I really feel like, when I go through this list, this bothers me because where are the real notable D&D players?
Well, no, I mean,
Like the real players that aren't just actors. I'm
they're
not just an actor.
they're
I'm
the millions and millions of people that nobody knows. That's why they're not on the list.
Right. That's what I'm saying. It's like maybe have like a who's who of D&D players.
Oh, maybe I don't know if we'll ever get to that point. But you know what? But if you had asked me 10 years ago, would I be able to rattle off a dozen people who are professional League of Legends players or professional Magic players? If you go back 20 years, I can go through the whole litany of them right now. 20 years ago, when Magic was first starting, you would never have got me in a million years to think you would know who any of these people were. But
Right.
they're legit people, and they're well known, have huge followings. Gamers, same thing.
Well, I think the great thing is the dynamic shift we've seen in the game.
Yeah.
Over all those decades and years, and even it's kind of changed exponentially and where we're at now.
Yeah.
And again, I have to say thank you to be a creator who walked in as a test player, now on a podcast because I'm DMing all the time and love the game and live and breathe the game every day now. It's great. And then again, thank you all you listeners out there. This has been awesome. And if you're listening and have more topics, talk to us. Check us out at dungeonstudios.co. We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah,
Get you involved.
Yeah, hit like, share, subscribe. Help us out with our Patreon. Help us out with our Kickstarter. Enderun Volume 2 Adventures out now. Planning on launching. The Kickstarter's out. I believe it's planning on shipping in February, so you don't even have to wait that long. Join us as a
that's
play
right.
tester. If you got a desire to get your name out there, you got some talent, you creative types, please reach out to us. We're always happy to meet new folks. As far as the show goes, we appreciate you sticking around and listening to us through everything.
Absolutely.
We look forward to coming back to you on a regular basis. So yeah, if you have ideas for shows, things you want to hear about, shoot them up to us. Because here's the thing. We've been working on a format for the show just so people can be comfortable with what we're going to listen to. It gives us something to kind of plan for, so we got things to discuss. But there's nothing saying that if we got a real deep topic, you bring something out there people really want to hear about, building characters, building backgrounds, world building, even doing some of that stuff live on the show, like a weekly world build. kind of
We're
stuff.
talking about the thing evolving too. If you're out there and you're a creator and you want to evolve the game and you want to come on our podcast, reach out to us, man. If you have something to contribute, we're all the same thing. I wanted to give a shout out. I saw a meme this week before we go, and it was the old Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. I don't remember the names of the characters. The guy who dresses like the Cavalier in the blue.
Yeah, that's the coward. Yep.
Right. They have him like the Karen mom with his finger pointing.
Yep.
Right. It looks great. And then they have Dungeon Master like the cat. And he's saying, why do I have to join more groups in Dungeons and Dragons and be part of a community? And Dungeon Master says, because that's what the game's about. And it was what we were talking about. Who are the big D&D players? All of us that are not on that list. And it's Tiamat's Tavern on Facebook. They had that meme, and their post was, come here and post everything. Post your ads for your Kickstarter. Post about your game. Post about your maps. Post about a great story at your table. That's what the game is about. So please, that's why we're here. So reach out to us and let's make this a huge community for everybody.
That's what we want to do. So everyone, thank you for listening to us. A long one today, but look, this is the kind of thing we want to be able to do, is have these long form conversations, get into topics, and just talk about the shit that makes us generally happy. So thank you for listening. We'll be back again next Monday night. Please share us with your friends. Please like and subscribe. Check us out on all the socials. Check out our Kickstarter. Check out our website. And remember, you play tabletop games and RPGs because they are limitless. So why listen to conversations that are any different?
Hey, and be ready to roll initiative, because no matter how you start out, you always start off odd.
Have a good night, folks. I remembered to let the ending credits play. I'm learning stuff. Good night, Internet. Enjoy the sounds.